welcome back to another unboxing review with GizmoSlipTech. Today we're taking a look at the MSI GT77, the most expensive gaming laptop money can buy. I have reviewed this in the past, but there was a lot of driver issues with the initial review. And so I wanted to retest it. And plus my testing methodology has changed quite a lot since I began doing these live streams at the beginning of the year. So there's a lot of additional games I've been testing, and this way I can line up and do more comparisons with other top gaming laptops in the near future. So that's one of the main reasons why I really wanted to redo this video. Now, Lance Talley, one of my subscribers and members on my channel, is letting me borrow this GT77 right here. He paid the full price for it, and he used it for a few months, and now he's selling it because his wife wanted to downgrade. He got this for his wife. His wife wanted to downgrade to a smaller laptop, so she got a 14-inch laptop instead. There's nothing wrong with the laptop as far as I know, and of course we'll be testing it today as well, so we'll get a good idea of any problems with the laptop. If you're interested in buying this laptop, there are links on the sheet down below. So if you go to my gaming laptop list, at the very top, I have a link to my review laptops that I have for sale. And I've just put this laptop on the list right here. And so this thing is still under warranty. And almost all of these, I'm not sure exactly which month, but it should be around, I think, April 2024. But this is the laptop that we'll be reviewing today. And I've got a lot of laptops in here that are for sale. These prices are updated and currently available. I believe all of these are still available for resale. And so if you're interested, if you're in the market for a laptop, that's a good deal on a used laptop. This is, I'm purposefully marking these prices below like the lowest sales price I have seen on any of the laptops so far this year. So the very, very best deal you could possibly get on most of these laptops are also basically like brand new. Like I tested them for a few hours and put them back in their boxes, and that's all the use they've ever had. So they're extremely low condition. The only exceptions here would be like my custom desktop that I'm selling with an RTX 3090. But I paid $4,000 for that, and I'm marking that down to $2,500 right now. I might actually go a little lower than that. We'll see if people are interested in it or not. Also, I have the Legion 7i, has 2 years of warranty left. I've got the extended Lenovo warranty on that is transferable. It has an RTX 3080 with the i9 and that 64 gigs of RAM. And I originally played like 3,800 for that. So extremely good deal on that. And of course, we've got a bunch of other laptops that I have either reviewed or I'm about to review. So if you're interested, please check out that list in the description or after the live stream or whatever. So, okay. Let's see here. Cool. Are you planning to do the review on the new Scar 17? I would like to, if I can. We'll see, Mark. That would be a big focus for me if I can get that, because it's very curious to see, how well that thing performs. Because that's going to be like the best processor from AMD, and this one's arguably going to be the best. It has the best processor from Intel, so it'd be very interesting to match that up with this one in particular. Okay, so this is my laptop list for 2023. Includes all the laptops that you can possibly buy. All of the top deals here are in the top section. The best premium laptops now are divided up in here, and those are basically all the most powerful laptops. Then we have the best portable gaming laptops. And then we have just the main list, and there are hundreds of laptops on this list with updated prices and stock availability updated daily. So please use the description, link in the description to shop around. And if you do use those links, it does help support me as a content creator. If you actually use the link to buy the laptop, basically. Okay, cool. So without further ado, let's do. We're gonna go over all of these things today. We're going to do a top deals and value comparison with the top deals that are currently out right now, as well as the best competitor laptops with the GT77. We're going to do all of the traditional unboxing review stuff, except the disassembly. I've already done the disassembly with a past GT77, so I'd refer to that if you're interested in the disassembly portion. But we're going to briefly go over everything up here, and then we're going to move into our fan noise testing, which we did not do, speaker test with decibel meter, and then straight into our benchmarks for all of these games, and we're going to do them twice. Once at 2560 by 1600, so QHD plus, so we can do comparisons with other laptops at that resolution, and then we're going to do them again at 4K, which is the native resolution of the GT77. So it's going to be very interesting to see, you know, how much performance do you lose going up to 4K? You know, how much detail do you gain? You know, you'll be able to looking at the screen live, and you can compare it side by side. Of course, it's a live stream, so it's not quite perfect resolution, but okay. TCAM, there's a new Aura 17. I believe it's the Aura 17H, and I believe it is on the list, TCAM. There's an Aura 7 and a 17H. I'm not sure. Thanks for trying to point that out, though. If there is a missing item, just email Ellie. So, hey there, GizmoSlipTech. I'm a Legion 5, and I upgraded the data drive 1 terabyte. Nice. Congrats on the Legion 5 purchase, Ben. Okay, let's get into this. I'm really excited. We're going to go over so much today. Let's get into this. The most expensive gaming laptop money can buy, the GT77. Like I said, this laptop is for sale if someone wants to buy this used monster. All right, so it's going to come with everything boxed in just like the laptop was, like when we sell this thing to whoever buys it. There'll be there's a couple of upgrades on it. It's got an SSD upgrade as well as a skin upgrade. All right. So here's the box. We got a nice design on the box, I gotta say. A lot of laptops this year went for a much more simplistic design. This thing's got a bit more of a flared emblem and etching and all that stuff on it, which is cool. All right, and there's the more emblem and etching color on here. The laptop right here. This thing is one of the biggest laptops of the year as well. So this laptop's the kind of laptop that someone who doesn't plan on moving their laptop very often would want to consider. So there's the laptop right there. Now there is a skin cover on the back of the laptop to help protect the laptop. It doesn't even look like there's really a skin on here, but that will help protect the laptop from scratches. And then there's also a skin cover on this that Lance installed, and it is covering the keyboard here. So that'll also help prevent some fingerprints from showing up as much and protect it from scratching as well. So this thing does come with a nice microfiber cloth, and then of course the cover, which we'll just set to the side for right now. As well as the laptop, we'll set that to the side and take a look at everything else in the box. Okay, so this thing has a nice little carrying case cover with some hand flits. So you get your warranty. It's a 12-month limited warranty. And this thing should come with about, I think, 7 months, 8 months of warranty left on it. I'm not sure the exact amount for whoever buys the used one here. So there's also a quick start guide to the laptop. Of course, the bigger question that we're going to try to explore today is, you know, if you're, this is just different languages right here, but it goes over all the ports and a lot of the hotkey functions that you can use to do different things, which are kind of cool. The bigger question for this laptop, of course, is this thing worth buying over the competition, especially at the full price. Now, I think at $4,000 buying this thing used like this, much better deal than paying the full price on it. A lot better value compared to a lot of the competition, considering the specs that this comes with. That said, if you were to pay full price for it, is it worth, you know, spending a small car's worth of, like a used car's amount of money on this laptop? Because that's basically what you're spending, right? So we've got our big power brick. This thing is a 330 watt monster power brick. Again, this laptop's really for people who do not plan on moving this thing around very much. And I gotta say that, in my opinion, it's a bit disappointing that MSI does not give you the smaller power brick that the GE78 comes with. The GE78 has a slimmed down power brick, and the more expensive GT77 does not have that, which just feels a bit weird. Oh, look at this. You get a Lucky Keytrain Dragon as well. I'll not open this, but there's a Lucky Keytrain Dragon. Because this is unopened, I don't want to open it so whoever, you know, buys the laptop can can take a look at that when they get it. Oh, and there's more stuff in here too. I don't think I checked this stuff out last time. I didn't even know. Oh, this is a gaming mouse. So this comes with a MSI gaming mouse M99 Pro. I actually didn't know that this came with the laptop. I didn't think that my original review unit that I got from MSI had this. I will open this up. Oh, nice. Okay, it looks like your standard gaming mouse, but MSI brand. I'm hoping this is an RGB light up, wheel, scroll buttons, and yeah. Seems like a pretty high quality gaming mouse. Wired, and it's a USB-A. All right. We'll actually use that gaming mouse today in testing the laptop. All right. Okay, so there's the GT77 unboxing. Let's go ahead and grab the laptop. Now, I do want to mention that Lance will sell this slim 330 watt charger with the laptop as well. This thing is a, what brand is this again? SlimQ. So this is a much smaller power adapter for if you're, like maybe you keep this one at home plugged in, and then you take the slim 330 watt power adapter charger with you on the road. But I believe this thing costs $400. I'll bet you Lance would part with this for probably $200 if you guys are interested in adding this. I have to double check the prices on that, but I'm pretty sure he would sell this with the laptop. And this is something that's applicable to most laptops out there because the end here is actually exchangeable. You can change it to different laptop power plugs, which is kind of cool. Now, I've not tested the slim 330 watt power adapter much, just a little bit here and there. And it was working fine with the laptop when I was testing it earlier. But it's pretty cool that it has it as a good alternative option if you want something that's more portable than this guy. Why didn't MSI get a power supply that small? Well, my guess is that MSI wanted to make sure that the power adapter was not going to overheat. And this larger power brick, I think, is less likely to overheat. I think that's going to be their reasoning. But I don't know. I feel like the one that comes with the GE78 is probably sufficient enough and not going to cause problems. I don't know. Okay, so let me go ahead and get this thing plugged in. Now, like I said at the beginning of the live stream, we are not going to take this guy apart because I already did that in previous live streams with the GT77. So we're not going to use our time taking it apart. On the left, let's go ahead and take a look at the ports. This laptop has some of the very best ports that money can buy. You have your power adapter plug, 2 USB A's, a full-size SD card slot, and then a headset port. On the rear of the laptop, we have all entirely just exhaust. Okay, so no ports over here. On the right side, we have a ton of ports, another USB-A, 2 Thunderbolt 4s, a mini display port, HDMI 2.1, and an Ethernet port. So in terms of port selection, variety, and quality of port coverage, we get 5 USB-As, a mini display port, HDMI, and a full-size SD card slot, and a network port. It's the best port selection, aside from maybe the Alienware M18, which is one of the competitors to the GT77. But this is absolutely one of the best port selections on any laptop at all. Now, one thing that you'll notice about the design choice from MSI is that when you open the laptop, it actually looks like a much smaller laptop. It doesn't look as big as the footprint would imply, and that's because of the back label here or edge here that's used for cooling. Now there's a lot of like the heat pipe fins and everything that come up into here, and then the exhaust fins for the fans. There's a 4-fan system out here blowing air out the back on the left, right, and rear. And it's quite an exhaustive cooling system on this unit. Again, if you want to see the inside, check my previous GT77 unboxing review that I made. Ray said, did you post about this laptop before? Yes, I have made a video about it in the past, but I've changed a lot about my testing methodology. And so I really wanted to redo my test for this laptop. Okay. And in addition, it was the first laptop I tested this year. And so there was a lot of driver bugginess and optimization issues. So I'm anticipating we'll see a lot better performance from a lot of the games in this version because of all the driver updates. So that's kind of the other thing that I'm looking to test and see what's the performance like now that all the driver updates have happened. And that might be very interesting to compare. You know, like the how much can driver updates actually improve performance or not? So pretty interesting. Pretty interesting question, I think. Okay, so Werner says, the only competitor I've seen that beats the Titan in performance is the Electronics Mech series with Prima Mod. Any tests in the future? So I have already tested that. It's the same as the XMG Neo 17. Those are the same laptops. And yes, I would say that the Neo 17 is very competitive with this. And I am planning on actually retesting the Neo 17 very, very soon because I'm actually going to do memory overclocking on it. Memory overclocking plus XMG sent me an updated water cooler. So the new water cooler is quieter than before. So that's going to be nice as well. Because the water pump was a little bit noisy, in my opinion, and it's quite noticeable. Okay, cool. So here we have the GT77. We're going to go over all of these things today. So we've just unboxed the laptop. Let's check quality control and flex test next. Then we'll check the webcam quality. If you didn't notice, there was Windows Hello that logged me in automatically when we were getting into this in here. So the laptop also does have, the mouse has a lot of RGB coming out the top up here as well as the lower area. That makes it kind of a nice rainbow effect along the bottom, like a rainbow strip. That's kind of a cool mouse for sure. Okay, very nice. So quality control, let's do it. So flex test. On this unit, let's see how it is. So extremely rigid, some flex here. Extremely rigid along the front, a little bit of flex, but not much. The thing is, like, I'm pushing very hard here. A little bit of flex, a little bit of flex, just a little bit of flex. Going through the keyboard now, some flex. Honestly, I feel like they could probably improve the flex situation just by adding another rubber foot or two underneath this middle area down here, because there's no rubber foot right here. If there was a rubber foot right here, I think the keyboard and middle section flex would probably be much improved. Maybe even one rubber foot right here as well for the middle level flex, because this thing is I believe it's an all metal chassis, or almost all metal. There is some plastic on it, but mostly metal chassis that is, in my opinion, very rigid. So there's the Windows Hello logging me in once again. Let's go ahead and do a little feel of this keyboard. Can you hear that mechanical keyboard? So that's another thing about this laptop. We got a mechanical keyboard here, and it has a very bright, vibrant backlight to it. Can you hear it? Very loud to type on keyboard. Britt Allen S, are you on BIOS 110? Yes, we are. I upgraded the BIOS, no issues, yesterday. So it was a bit of nerve-wracking for a moment while it was going, because it had to restart like a bunch of times. I was like, oh no, are we in a boot loop? But it upgraded just fine, no problem. And yeah, we're on the latest BIOS, which came out just a couple weeks ago. So, does the back sticking out bother you? That's a great question. I think that from a user perspective, like when you're using the laptop, you don't even see the back sticking out. And I think the back sticking out is one of the biggest cons of the laptop from a portability perspective. You know, like if this thing was just chopped off right here, this thing would actually be a very portable laptop. But because it has this back end sticking out, it might not fit onto as many like coffee tables at Starbucks or whatever. But generally speaking, this is a desktop replacement type device where you're going to move it from desk to desk. And typically desks have plenty of space for this kind of rear end extra bit here. Okay, so let's talk keyboard layout and keyboard options. Okay, so first of all, we have a number pad on this, but it is a rather small one. It's kind of one of the cons, I think, of this device is this number pad here, because there are smaller laptops that have, I guess, more functional, larger keys on the number pad. That said, there are a lot of functionalities here, and there is an FN lock button on this laptop, which I did not realize when I first used it. If you press FN plus escape, now you can use the, you can see I'm using the volume here without having to press FN. It basically switches all the key functionalities along this F series to the secondary function on the fly. And now that I've unenabled it, now you cannot use it. These do not do this. These are back to F2 and F3. So overall, I think this keyboard is extremely comfortable to type on. One of the most comfortable keyboards to type on from a feel perspective because of the awesome mechanical nature of it. It's just got this amazing shunk to it, and it feels super satisfying to type on it, in my opinion. So that said, this thing is not like, I don't think the ultimate keyboard, mainly because of the layout over here on the right side. You know, the smaller number pad I think could be improved, especially on such a large device. I feel like MSI shouldn't have a cramped number pad, and the arrow keys are also smaller. I wish they were a bit larger. Now notice that there is a square patch over here. This is a fingerprint sensor. That's right, you get a fingerprint sensor on this laptop, one of the only gaming laptops in 2023 to have a fingerprint sensor. I think it's the only, is it not the only one? I'm trying to think of any other ones. The Asus ROG Ally, the handheld, that has a fingerprint sensor, and maybe a handful of other ones like the Flow X series might have fingerprint sensors. But very, very few laptops this year have fingerprint sensors. But this is an alternative for logging in with Windows Hello. And there is a Windows Hello camera, IR camera right here at the top. And there is also a shutter button see if I can show this to you. There's a privacy shutter button that completely blocks the webcam if you don't want it to work, but that will prevent Windows Hello from working. So if you want to keep your Windows Hello working, you have to not use that pretty much, or uncover it whenever you want to log in, which is kind of a big hassle. So I'm not sure how many people would actually use that. Okay, so let's go to the camera. Let's test the webcam out. Okay, so webcam quality could certainly be improved quite a lot. We do not have very much resolution here. I believe it's only a 720p webcam. And as you can see in this picture, you can't quite make out all the characters of the Lumix, which is, I think, a bit surprising. The GH5, you know, this, it's not GH, yeah, it is a GH5 right here. You can't even really read that, right? And like my details around my beard hairs and all of this, pretty muddled. The colors are also pretty weak. I think that they could do a lot better here on the most expensive laptop in the market. For sure, I think there needs to be at least a 5 megapixel webcam on here. It cannot cost that much for MSI to add that. And it's, I think, something that a lot of people would really like on a laptop this expensive. All right, so Britt Allen says, I love my GT77. Yeah, I bet you do. It's a really good laptop. Can you try Fortnite? Not today. It's not on the games that I've installed. The Razer Blade 16 versus this laptop. This laptop will have more performance, but the Blade 16, of course, will be more portable. Daniel Bearcat says, this is the best laptop I've ever owned. No problems updating mine. Nice. $5,300 laptop, and they're using a 720p webcam. Yeah, should be at least 1080p. I totally agree. 1080p should be absolute bare minimum. But at least it's Windows Hello. All right. So anyway, okay. Let's talk control software. So if you want to control the RGB, you go to SteelSeries GG, which is their, they've partnered with SteelSeries, which is, you know, a keyboard and accessory manufacturer to make the keyboard on this. And so you actually control the RGB lights from inside the SteelSeries software. Now, there's the MSI Mystic light along the back of the device. You can change the color layout of that. I'll show that to you here in a moment. And then you have the per key RGB lighting, which you can switch between these different settings. Let me see if I can zoom in. The screen is so bright, it's like blowing out the camera. Aqua, Aurora, Chakra, Default, Disable, Dragon Shield, Drain, Freeway, Plane, and Rainbow Split. Aurora and Chakra are the two best ones, I think, and most people are going to be doing those two. Now, it is a per key RGB keyboard, so you can set up the keyboard for each individual key. If you want certain colors or a certain layout for some reason, you can do that as well. All right, so let's turn these lights off and do a keyboard overview. Okay, so this currently is Aurora. This is Aqua. This is Chakra. Chakra is probably my favorite, maybe Aurora. This is the default. It's kind of like a massive per key rainbow smash up. A little bit chaotic for me, but some people might like that a lot. You can obviously turn the lights off. You can do Dragon Shield, which is like a sliding MSI colors. There's Drain, which is, I believe, lights coming into the center of the laptop. Like a rainbow, and then it drains down into the middle, which is pretty cool too. There's Freeway. There's Plane if you just want one color. And Rainbow Split, which has lights coming from the center outwards. So we're going to do Chakra for our review. Notice that this is a Cherry MX keyboard here. You got the Cherry MX logo here. That's the mechanical switches used in the keyboard itself, which Cherry MX is probably the most popular for premium laptop or premium desktop keyboards. All right, so let's go ahead and flip this around so you can see the rear RGB lighting, which is quite extensive and very bright as well. So you can change this lighting from several different selections. Let me go to, right now it's currently on rainbow. Here is Aurora. So Aurora is kind of like the Aurora Borealis lights. This is blue flash. I do love my blue colors, blue being my favorite color. Here's chakra. So chakra being the full rainbow wave with all the different RGB colors. You can, of course, disable it. There's also the default multicolor RGB. I didn't click on the right one. Hold on. So there's your like tons of different colors, just rainbow unicorn vomit, basically. Then you've got the Dragon Shield, which again is the MSI color scheme. Looks quite good, I think. This is macaw, I guess parrots themed. I don't know. There's plain, which is just one color that you can set, and rainbow, which is very similar to chakra. So very cool lighting on this system. I'm a big fan of it. It's easy to control. I think it looks really good. That's definitely one of the things that you're paying for with this laptop. Okay. Very nice. All right. Let me go ahead and turn the lights back on here. Okay, there we go. Very nice. Okay, so let's see here. Next up on our test, I'm not sure. I've already done the display test in my previous unboxing. I would encourage you to check that out. Let's move on to our speaker test. Also, we're going to evaluate the control software. I've done this, I can do this briefly. We're kind of doing that when we were looking at all the different keyboard options. Brightest RGB on a laptop, in your opinion? I would say that the Titan is about equal with the Blade series in terms of brightness. The Legion Pro 7i is also very competitive. All three of those are about the same level of RGB brightness. All right. So let's go into the MSI Center. Now, MSI Center, for some reason, did not want to set up when I initially got the laptop formatted this week. Like I had to actually take an hour or two to troubleshoot it. In order to get it to go to fully install, I had to delete the program files folder for MSI Center and then reinstall it from the Windows Store. So otherwise it was stuck on loading. Anyway, so this is the key area you need to know about. The user scenario under features, user scenario. This is how you control the laptop. Fan profiles, you've got silent, balanced, and extreme performance. And then of course, super battery. And if you're interested in the most battery life possible out of this laptop, you probably also want to put it into integrated graphics mode, which will prevent the NVIDIA GPU from activating. Now, if you're in the MS hybrid graphics mode, you can obviously switch between the NVIDIA and Intel GPUs, which is nice if you're regularly unplugging this and plugging it back in and you need a lot of battery life regularly. Generally speaking, most people, considering this is a desktop replacement, are going to be using this when it's plugged in. So the discrete graphics mode is probably the best way to go if you want the most performance out of the laptop. Now, under the settings in here, you can overclock in extreme performance mode. You can do a 200 megahertz VRAM overclock and a 200 core clock overclock if you want. Out of the box, it's only a 100 megahertz core clock offset that's included. So, awesome. So let's see here. Next up, I mean, there's a couple other things in here, but there's hardware monitoring section, and then there is a gaming mode section, which not really, there's kind of pointless. And then there's also general settings, and you might actually use some of the general settings in here, such as changing your closed lid action if you want the laptop to go to sleep or do nothing. If you're using external monitor, keyboard, and mouse, you may want to do that. You can also activate or deactivate the crosshair that pops up in the center of the screen. You can also use a hotkey for that. Display panel saver, which will set the laptop's display to 60 hertz refresh rate when you unplug the laptop. USB power share, which turns on the USB port for charging your phone even if the laptop is turned off. This will drain your battery life while the laptop is turned off, though. So that's something to keep in mind. Yeah, so that's the core features of the software. We're going to be testing the laptop today in extreme performance, and we're also going to turn on Cooler Booster. Under the fan speed section here, we're going to go to Cooler Booster instead of Auto, and that's going to set the fans to max speed when we're testing the laptop today. All right. You can hear the fans spinning up right now. All four of them. 4 fans in this bad boy. Okay, so let's go ahead and test the speakers with the decibel meter next. And then we'll move into our fan noise testing. So let me get the camera set up real quick. Drew Malzani says, can you review the Scar 17 HX3D? I would love to. We'll see if I can get Asus to send it to me, or if I can order one. We'll see. Okay, so beautiful. So we're gonna need to actually turn the fans off of max fan mode, which there's a hotkey for that. Just FN plus up arrow. It allows you to quickly turn the fans on and off for full speed, which I do really like that. Okay, so next is, so first song is going to be Peter Spacey Roar. I believe there is an audio control. Yeah, Nahimic is our audio control software. So if you're wanting to adjust audio on this laptop, then this is where you would do that. You can turn on and off the effects. And generally, I think the default settings are pretty good. You get a bass boost, a voice boost, and a treble boost. And the effects are on right now. So we'll go ahead and go to Peter Spacey Roar. Zith asks, do you get G-Sync when using the NVIDIA GPU only? Or just adaptive? Oh, Lance says, this is the 64 gig version. It's not $52.99 like the 128 gig version only. Gotcha. Okay, so yeah, this is the 64 gig version. Gotcha. Thanks for clearing that up, Lance. Okay. Let's go ahead and open the media player and turn the volume all the way up. And let me make sure the laptop is plugged in as well. There we go. Wow, the screen just got really bright. All right, so audio's at max. And let's go ahead and... The screen's so bright now that it's literally making everything else in the room dark. It's one of the, like, it's literally like one of the issues with the mini LED display, that in certain environments, like darkroom environments, you probably will want to turn the display brightness down because it might hurt your eyes. It's such a bright display. Okay, so Peter Spacey Roar is our first test. Let's do that. And so adjusting the camera a little bit. And we're going to put the mic next to our decibel meter. So default room decibels was 42.5. Man, it is a very full bassy sound. You've got, it's still maintaining its clarity pretty well for the mids and highs, because this system does have dedicated subwoofers that help prevent, you know, the mids and highs from interfering with the bass. The speakers on this are very, very good. They're up there with some of the best that you can get in a gaming laptop. We're gonna move into Faded Aeon Half-Life. So the one thing I'll say is that, like, it feels like the mids and highs are not quite perfectly crisp, but the bass is really good because of the dedicated subwoofers. I'm thinking with Nahimic, you might be able to adjust this. Maybe we turn off this, and maybe it would. Does this sound better now? I think it does sound better when you turn off the treble boost. Help prevent the highs from breaking up as much. All right, Deuce Williams, La La Love You Like.
I love you like la 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 la. I love you like la 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 la. I love you like la 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 la.
Okay, so overall, I think my only real complaint is that some of the mids and highs are not quite as crisp, and also the overall volume is not quite as loud as what I get on the Blade 18. Cult Serpent says, how's the noise levels on this beast, Brandon? Would you consider this quiet enough to do pro audio work? Greetings from Greece. I'm not sure. I think the latency is one of the main issues when it comes to pro audio work. And if you're going to do pro audio work, you're probably going to want to use headphones anyway. But as far as noise levels on this laptop, you can tune the noise levels to be extremely loud or extremely quiet. We're going to go through all of that here in a moment. We're actually just about to go into that section because that's, I think, next up. Is fan noise testing with a decibel meter, so you're going to be able to see how loud the laptop is here when we're under different workloads. So let's go ahead and move into that next. So this is part of the reason why I wanted to retest the laptop. You know, there's a lot of things I was not testing at the beginning of the year that I'm testing now. So I want to make sure to give all the details that I can for any people that are interested in potentially buying this thing. All right, so Let's go ahead and load up 3D Mark. So keep in mind that we do have 3 terabytes of SSD space installed in here, but for actually testing everything, I'm using an external SSD. So we're not using the internal SSD speeds. And one of the key things about this laptop is that it does support PCIe Gen 5 SSDs for ultra fast performance. The tricky part is getting your hands on one, because when I bought the GT77, I was looking at them and there was very few on the market. And honestly, I don't even know if you really even notice a difference between a Gen 5 and Gen 4 SSD, unless you're doing extremely heavy data workloads. Do you remember any ghosting on the Strix G16 1200p display? No, Kim Jong, it was very good. For that price, it's dumb excluding G-Sync compatibility. I think that comes down to just the monitor, monitor support. I don't know if this monitor can do G-Sync or not. If it can, then it would just be a matter of MSI, I think, not paying the extra fees for it. But yeah, I really wish it had G-Sync support. Almost all of MSI's laptops do not support G-Sync. So, and as far as G-Sync goes, the only time I think it's relevant really is when you're doing low FPS gaming. So if you're doing like 35 to 60 FPS range in terms of gaming performance, like that's when you notice like screen tearing much more. But if you're doing like, 100 plus FPS, there's almost never screen tearing anyway. So yeah, it's one of those things that's, it's kind of like, is it really worth even having? And in general, when you're spending $5,300, I wish you were. I really wish you were. Right? Cold Serpent says, by pro audio, I meant audio recordings. Do you reckon you'd be able to record? Yeah, so if you have this thing in quiet mode, when your laptop's barely under load, you should be able to be it should be able to be very, very quiet. But if you're like, I guess it would partially depend on how close the mic was to the fans. Because I'm sure if you put this in silent mode and you have a small load, the fans are going just a little bit, you're going to have just a tiny bit of fan noise coming from the laptop. But you're only going to really hear that if the mic is like right up next to the laptop fans. So in general, I would think it should be very, very quiet in silent mode. Joe Doing Random says, the 10 key is odd. I'm not sure if I could use that. It certainly is a different shape. The key thing being that you can use, put your finger on the 5 and still type with it. And so I would say that in general, you can definitely still use it. I think most people will be able to use it, no problem. Okay, so right now, we're going to go to max fan mode. We're going to start in the loudest configuration, and we're going to move to quieter and quieter configurations. Okay, so right off the start here, you can see that the Honeywell PTM, which is the interface material used with this laptop, is doing a great job. I mean, look at us. We're pulling 170 something watts of power. We're doing 2265 on the RTX 4090. 100% GPU utilization, 63 degrees, 64 degrees. Let's see how hot the CPU, GPU get. I would not be surprised if in some games it does get spicy on the temperatures, but generally speaking, I think in the vast majority of titles, this should have really good temps, at least when on max fan. Of course, one thing that's very interesting to note about how MSI have tuned this laptop is, if you haven't noticed, we have got 63 watts of power going through the CPU right now, even though it may not really need that much juice to run TimeSpy, okay? So it's pretty interesting that it's pulling so much CPU wattage when it may not have to. Like, for example, in my Blade 18, when I'm doing a time spy run like this, I think the CPU is only pulling like 35 watts. And it's putting out very similar levels of performance. So, very interesting. Now, we do not have any overclock applied to the GT77 right now. I don't believe. Let's see here. Maybe in the extreme performance profile, the GPU is set to 100, 200. Yeah, so there is a small overclock being applied right now to the clock speeds. So this is a 100 megahertz overclock right now. It's interesting that we're not pulling the 175 watts. And also the clock speed here, it seems lower than when I initially tested it because MSI has done a lot of driver updates, BIOS updates, and I think they may have dropped the factory OC a little bit to be a little bit lower than what it used to be because it was running very spicy, like extra overclock out the gate. It still might be a slight overclock out the gate. But it doesn't seem like as high as it was. So we'll see what we get in Time Spy. I'm curious. Okay, so our temps, 65 degrees on the GPU. That's excellent. 74, 71, 75 on the CPU. Also excellent considering the amount of wattage going through here. Sometimes going up to 75 here. With an overclock, I would certainly expect our GPU to be able to go up to around 2250 to 2350 on our boost clock on a regular basis. And that, of course, would also help pull our wattage up if we did that. Okay. All right, so we're going to come back. Let's go ahead and see how loud this fan is. "59 decibels for max fans." I think that's very reasonable. Let's go ahead and turn max fans off. So now it's going to MSI's auto fans right now. And the auto fans are deciding right now how loud the laptop should be. So right now it is 170 watts of power still. Our performance has not changed, but our temps have jumped up about 5 degrees on the CPU and GPU, 87 for a moment there on the CPU. So we'll have to let kind of the fans kind of came back up, like they went really low, and then now MSI is ramping them up more, so it's finding equilibrium with the temperatures and the fan noise. And we're going to let it do that, and also we're going to try to see what the temperatures rest at as the equilibrium sets in. Courage says, "Without power plugged in on the Alienware M18, I was able to play games smoothly." Nice. The GT77 Titan was not like that. Interesting. I'm not sure exactly, Courage. No, so maybe you didn't have like the NVIDIA Whisper or like the game mode, the battery boost mode or whatever in NVIDIA settings, maybe where those weren't turned on with the GT77 or I'm not sure. Or maybe you're in the wrong profile on the GT77 in the MSI Center, not sure. MSI laptops only support FreeSync, Adaptive Sync on the iGPU, it seems. They just don't want to pay for the G-Sync branding because every other manufacturer supports G-Sync. Yeah. Okay. So. Very nice. Let's go and take a look at our temperatures. 71 degrees, 70 on the GPU, 72, 74, 85, 87, 76. So we're jumping around on our CPU temps right now, but in general, it looks like mid 70s to low 80s for auto fans. And obviously very, very good performance right now coming out of this laptop. Let's go ahead and see how loud the fans are now. 54.9, 55 decibels. So we went down 4 decibels in auto fan mode. That's quite good. I do think that that's honestly better. That's better than I thought it would be. Originally, I was thinking it was going to be like 62 decibels and like 58 decibels for these fan modes, but it honestly seems quieter now. LSP, I'm not dropping any frames, so I think everything's good so far on the stream. Okay, so we're gonna go to, we're gonna change it up. We're gonna go to balanced mode. So balanced mode for our fan profile right now. This is gonna lower our fans further and lower our power limits on the GPU and potentially the CPU. So notice that our power limit on the GPU went down to 155. And our CPU wattage is still doing about the same though. So we basically dropped 25 watts off the GPU, or maybe 15 to 20 watts off the GPU. Interesting. But look at that boost clock, 1850. So quite a bit lower on the boost clock for this 4090 though. Our temperature is really nice. Okay, looks like OBS disconnected and reconnected for some reason. I don't know why. Rationalist, hey, just got the Blade 18 for $2,500 on eBay. Congrats, man. That sounds like a good deal. With a 4080, that's still a pretty good deal. Taha says, you did a long video about this already. What about the Acer Triton 17? So when I did this video on this GT77, I did a lot of different tests, and not the test the way that a lot of people want to see it, with the fan noise testing, speaker noise testing with the decibel meter, and the drivers were all out of date. So we're doing updated drivers and more conclusive testing, more thorough testing on the GT77. And I was able to borrow this laptop from a friend who's selling it actually. So if you're in the market for the GT77, this one's on sale for $4,000. Okay. So, well, I think we've settled down quite nicely here. 1950 on the boost clock right now, 155 watts of power, 69 degrees on the GPU, 79 on the CPU, 80. So good CPU, GPU wattage still. Definitely not hitting peak performance anymore. We had a noticeable drop on the boost clock down into the 1950 to 1850 range. You know, that's like a 200, 300 core clock reduction. And part of that is we took off the overclock, and also boost clock means that we're, you know, reducing the balance mode means we're going to a lower wattage, which is going to lower our voltage node quite a bit, that the GPU driver is using. So overall performance should still be very good in balance mode. Let's see how loud it is. .4 decibels in balanced mode. So we dropped another 1.5 decibels, and we had lower temperatures, but significantly reduced performance going to balanced mode. All right, so let's go ahead and zoom in on here again, and let's go to silent mode and see what we get in silent mode. Silent mode has been activated. So silent mode, keep in mind that like if you're gonna do a non-heavy workload, like we're doing a 3D heavy workload right now in silent mode, and I'm actually amazed that we're able to pull this much wattage. So far in silent mode, the GPU is still doing 155 watts, crazy. And then the CPU, that was the only thing that went down in performance, down to around 45 to 50 watts for the CPU. That's still a lot of wattage for a completely silent laptop. And our temps are looking pretty dang good still. Let's see how they do over a little bit of time. Because obviously this is, you know, just, it's only been about a minute now. So, oh, interesting. So silent mode, we're temperature throttling now. So we were power limit throttling. Now we're temperature throttling. Silent mode is not letting the GPU go above, it looks like 75 degrees. And we're dropping wattage now in silent mode based on temperature throttling. So if the laptop is, you know, if the laptop is getting warm, then the laptop will consistently power limit throttle lower based on the temperature. I mean, it's temperature throttling, it's not power limit throttling, but they'll reduce the power limit and the core clock speed until the temperature stays in check. And the temperature is staying in check right now. I'm actually really impressed at how much performance we're getting from a laptop that is essentially very, very quiet. Like I'm gonna put the mic right up next to the fans in the back. I'm sure we'll probably be able to hear them a little bit. So this is the left fan. This is the rear fan. Right up next to the fans. And this is the right fan. All right, let's do our decibel meter testing. We should be essentially completely quiet. Interesting. So just a slight bit of noise coming from the laptop because we were, I think, 42.5 decibels for our baseline. So we went up by like a half a decibel or maybe 1 decibel with the fans in silent mode here. And let's take a look at our performance now that we've had a little bit longer for the laptop to get used to the silent mode and adjust to the low fan noise. So our temps, we're still temperature throttling. We're averaging around 125 watts of power to the GPU. Our boost clock doing around 1600. CPU is doing around 40 to 50 watts on that CPU. So overall, obviously extremely good performance considering it's in silent mode, but your mileage will vary in silent mode depending on, you know, your workload and everything, but this should still be plenty of juice to play almost any game, at least in theory. Just maybe not, obviously not at the same max settings maybe, or maybe not the same frame rate. Your frame rate is definitely going to be reduced significantly by going into silent mode. I'm guessing you're only going to get about 60% of the power that you would get in full performance mode with this laptop when you're in silent mode, but it's still. And this is with a very heavy workload, combined workload doing about 170 to 180 watts of power in silent mode, which is phenomenal. Okay. Any new info on the rumored RX 7900M? Not that I know of, but I'm not sure, Ghost. What about the Acer Triton 17? It's just a matter of me getting the laptop, Taha. I'm sorry that I haven't been able to review it. I would love to review that if I can. Okay. So we've already done TimeSpy and Cinebench testing, but I want to redo them because with new drivers, new BIOS updates, all of that has definitely changed the performance profile of this laptop. And so I want to see what kind of performance we get out of the box with Cinebench R23 and of course with the, what am I trying to say? TimeSpy, because yeah, a lot of changes here. So let's go ahead and get into our extreme performance mode. All right, and we're going to turn max fans on. All right, we're going to go ahead and slide this bad boy forward. There we go. All right, so we're going to go ahead and do our TimeSpy run since we've got it. We got it pulled up here already. So keep in mind that we've got extreme performance profile activated with the 100/200 OC on the GPU. Todoroki wants to know, what do I think about the Lenovo 9i? All I saw so far was the prototype pictures and the leaked images of it. It looks like it has a cool design, but I was expecting a mini LED. That is disappointing if it does not have a mini LED, because otherwise, how is it really that much different from the Pro 7i? So, yeah, like that is like that to me. That was the thing that really makes it stand apart, I guess. Rationalist face, does that mean the single core clock went down? It tends to take a hit when going into silent in my experience. Typically, yeah, all the core clocks, if you're an all core or in single core, will take a hit when you reduce the wattage. Superboss says no teardown. There is a teardown that I already did on this laptop that I would encourage you to check out. If you're looking for the full teardown on this, I've already done it. So check my review history. I did it near the beginning of the year. Just search GizmoSlipTech GT77, and I did a full teardown on it in that live stream. So that was one of the things that did not change about the laptop. So the things that did not change, the display test and the teardown, those things, I'm just going to refer to the original live stream. And we're focusing mainly on the things that have changed, like driver updates, and stuff like that. Okay, so Max fans were not on at the beginning of that test. I just enabled Max fans, but it'll have Max fans for the vast majority. Rationalist Faith says, is the 4070 that bad? As I see a huge price reduction in laptops that have it. I mean, 3070 Ti is really good, and I'm sure the 4070 is better than it. So the 4070 Ti, the 4070 is only a little bit faster than the 3070 Ti, maybe like 8 to 10% faster, which is not a huge jump. And so that's why a lot of people were going for 3070 Ti's or 4060s, because a 3070 Ti and a 4060, very similar in performance, and quite a bit less money than the 4070 laptops. The 4070 laptops were very overpriced, in my opinion, at the beginning of the year. And they've really come down in price, especially the more budget flavor 4070s, the Asus TUF F15 and the Acer Nitro 16. Both of those have reduced in price like so much. But at the beginning of the year, the only 4070s we were seeing were the more expensive, like $1,800 to like $2,500 or $3,000. And those were just not in a good price range for a 4070, which made them very difficult to recommend as a reviewer. Nowadays, there's a lot of 4070s that are priced really well, and I can definitely recommend those laptops without a doubt. So, So right now the laptop is doing 175 watts through the GPU, and it was doing 75 for the CPU for a lot of that test. So 250 watts combined load going through the laptop. Not necessarily the most we've seen, but one of the most we've seen in any TimeSpy test, because TimeSpy usually does not slam the CPU quite that hard. And that goes to show you that basically MSI is over-tuning, over-tweaking the CPU to have it run at higher wattages to hopefully give better performance. And I think that's probably one of the changes the MSI made with the BIOS since I reviewed it, because I don't think it was pulling that high wattage before. Okay, so out of the box, extreme performance mode with the slight overclock. So not quite out of the box, but basically out of the box from MSI, 22,335, 16,605 for our CPU score. Both of those are very good, like super excellent. We should be able to push this over 23,000 or very close to it with an overclock. putting like say a 220 or 200 overclock on the 4090. Yeah, very good performance all around. All right, let's see here. We're going to go ahead and pull up Cinebench R23. And we're going to do a few runs to verify its level of performance right now. I'm going to go ahead and get Process Lasso installed as well. I'm going to go ahead and close down a few of the extra applications that we have running here. All right, and we're going to set Cinebench R23 to be above normal CPU priority. And let's get HWInfo 64 opened as well. So one of the things that MSI did since I tested the laptop back in February, March, was I know that they had reduced the CPU wattage level that the CPU can pull unless you're in integrated only CPU mode, which does not make sense to me. And I basically told them that that doesn't make sense to me. So right now you can see that our P-core clock is doing our P-cores, performance cores, are doing 3.69. Let me go and zoom in so you can see this better. 3.69 on the P cores, 3.01 on the E cores, 3.02 there for a moment on some of them. We're only doing 118 watts of power. We got 26,821 out of the box. All right, so this is not the same level of performance that this laptop got when we first had it unboxed. And this is one of the reasons why I want to do this updated test to show you this performance difference. This is happening because basically my understanding is that MSI said, whoops, we can't have people pulling 175 watts to the CPU and 150 watts to the GPU. That does more, that requires more wattage pull than what our AC adapter can do. So they limited the CPU to 120 watts max when the GPU is in GPU enabled mode. Does not make sense to me because I think they should be able to tell or check with the BIOS, and see, is the GPU pulling high wattage? If it's pulling high wattage, then limit the CPU. If the GPU is not pulling high wattage, then they should let the CPU fly. The CPU should be able to fly when the GPU is not under load. And you should be able to do this without having to restart the machine. So you can see that we've averaged right around 26,800 consistently with no variation almost. I'll do a run where I do not touch anything and we just let this thing run. Obviously, 26,000 is very, very good, but it's not as good as what we had at launch. At launch, out of the box, this thing was doing over 30,000 because it could pull higher wattage. And then when we undervolted it, we were getting over like 34,000 with an undervolt. So yeah, clearly not as good a performance on the CPU side of things. 27,172. Now, let's go ahead and switch this to integrated graphics only mode. And then we'll try Cinebench R23 again. And we'll see if we can get better performance. Rationalist says, are OEMs accidentally reducing performance to match specs after initial review and buying craze? I don't think that they are typically doing that. I think that it's more an issue of how you say. In this case, I think some probably executive or engineer got a little overzealous in reducing or protecting the laptop from damage, and they over undertuned it. Like I think that this is the only manufacturer that's doing this. Almost all, I think all of the other manufacturers can pull higher wattage than this, except the Blade 18. The Blade 18 doing 120 watts, 100 to 130 watts by default. Let's see now. Man, that screen is just so bright. It's hard to expose for it. All right, so Cinebench R23. All right, and we're going to close Steam. And we need to get HW info reopened again. So what this essentially means is that if you're going to do dedicated CPU only workloads, then you're going to get an advantage by turning off the NVIDIA GPU with a restart before you render your files, which is a big pain in the butt, in my opinion. And it really hurts the average user's flexibility with the laptop. So let's go ahead and make sure that we're in balance mode, integrated graphics mode. So we're extreme performance mode with integrated graphics mode. Let's see if our power pull is higher now than what it was. 202 watts of power through that CPU. Whoosh, whoosh. That is the most I think I've seen, out of any laptop. Let's switch it back. So we're turning off the minimum test duration. Two hundred and 202 watts again to the CPU. Let's see what it actually comes down to. 170. Let's take a look at our P cores and E core clocks. So 3.9 or 4 gigahertz, 3.99 to 3.9 gigahertz on our P cores, 3.3 gigahertz on our E cores, and we got 30,228, which is a massive improvement. Over 3,000 points more by switching to the integrated graphics mode. I just think that they should roll this change back, in my opinion. I think that handling the power output should be something that the laptop is capable of, the BIOS is capable of doing on the fly without having to force a restart. 28,933. Exademon says, my electronics or XMG managed to get 34,000 on the i9-13900HX. Yeah, with an undervolted overclocked 13900HX, you can get competitive performance levels out of that chip without having to pay the premium for the 13980HX, which is really nice. Now we're in HW info here. Let's see what our core clocks are. 3.8, 3.3 for our E-cores. Temps are spicy, 89 degrees, 95 degrees on the package. 150 watts of power going through that CPU right there. 28,000 right now. And this is without an undervolt. If you undervolt this sucker, if you prioritize and tweak and optimize this thing, 32 to 34,000 should be the target range with an undervolt and a more optimum overclock. Also, if you were to add a laptop cooler, that would help here because we're approaching our max temperature and we have reached thermal throttling on the ring and cores. So if you add a laptop cooler, I think additional performance can be had. Potentially, maybe even more performance if you were to also redo the thermal pads. Potentially, hard to say whether you can improve that or not. Wasim, welcome to the stream. Isn't integrated graphics mean using CPU die for rendering? I'm confused. So this Cinebench R23 test always uses CPU only. It's a multi-core CPU test. It does not use the NVIDIA GPU at all, which is why I think it's silly for them to limit CPU performance when the NVIDIA GPU and Intel CPU are both active at the same time. So it's strange. The GT77 is pulling 150 watts of power and only doing 28 to 30K. So 152 watts right now. 28.7. You got to keep in mind that I have HW info open, which does help, does reduce the scores just a little bit. Wait for this update. 3.9 gigahertz, 3.2 gigahertz, 3.3 gigahertz. I mean, I think this performance is very typical for the i9-13980HX. The thing about if you were to go with the higher end spec processors is that I'm expecting them to do better in single core just a little bit and also be a little more undervolting friendly. Because it's basically like a higher bin 13900HX. Basically, it's not much different. It's almost the same chip. It's Intel's self-silicon lotterying the same chip, essentially. And yeah, 159 watts of power going through the CPU right now, 95 degrees. We're reaching spicy temps. We got a lot of performance going through here. Realistically, if you want to push these performance numbers, you got to undervolt it. That's the key, I think, here. And make sure that cloud is not doing anything. You can see that the CPU is not being engaged with anything except a little bit of HW info. So yeah, I don't think that we're losing performance in any other way. I think that you just got to recognize that an undervolting is super important. Undervolting really helps these i9 chips boost much higher. That's too hot. Well, it's very high wattage levels going through the system, right? It is very hot temps. It's not dangerous temps, but it's very spicy temps for a reason. Because we're doing a lot of wattage. 219 watts. Whew, it boosted to 219 watts. That's insane. 4.2 gigahertz, 3.5 gigahertz. Yeah, I mean, if you like, it's doing the initial boost, 30,200, because I took a little break, because I was doing in the past there when we were doing 28,200 or whatever, because I was doing them nonstop. That's more like the throttled long-term score. What I did just now was like a temporary boost. So like if I don't do anything, all right, if I were to close HW info even, and I activate it and I don't touch the mouse, let's see what we get for our like more vanilla raw running score with nothing interrupting it at all. Is there such thing as too much undervolting? My blade has up to minus 200 millivolt if I remember correctly. The main thing is stability. So 30,589 out of the box in an initial first run scenario, and about 28,200 with a continuous run, multi-run. Undervolting this thing obviously will set the unleash. It'll unleash the beast. So that gives you a good idea of Cinebench R23 performance. Given the new BIOS updates, I do think it's disappointing that MSI makes you switch into integrated graphics mode if you want the full performance level of the CPU. I mean, that said, 120 watts of power, I'm still very happy with 120 watts of power going through my Blade 18, right? Like I'm not like so disappointed with my Blade 18 CPU performance. It's an insane amount of CPU performance where you're almost never running into issues because there's so much performance level. It's faster than any laptop we've ever had before, and from a multi-core perspective. So I'm not complaining even with 120. It's just when you're spending, $5,000 on a laptop, you wish that you could get the max, right? You look at other laptops and you go, well, that one can go to the max when the NVIDIA GPU is active. Why can't this one? And I think that's their problem right now that they need to work on. Windows hello, logging me in again. Okay, so we're back into NVIDIA GPU mode. We're ready to do our game testing. So we're going to start out with Apex Legends. You previously said that using a cooling pad is preferable for these high-end laptops due to their high voltage consumption. Wasim, it is true that you're going to be able to get a lot more benefit, I think, from when you use a laptop cooling pad. It'll affect things a lot more when you're pulling like 250 watts combined workload through a laptop than say you're doing like an RTX 4050 or 4060, 4070 laptop, and you're only doing like 130 watts combined load. It's like half the electricity, half the heat. And just regular laptop cooling is going to do a lot better in that type of scenario. And you won't need a laptop cooler as much with that type of a laptop. I mean, that said, I think there are still some advantages to using a laptop cooler. Even with the lower wattage laptops, especially like a laptop cooler like the MSI GT700, where you have a dust filter to prevent dust from getting into your system, because that can obviously gunk up the cooling potential and can make it a lot warmer running over time. And if you use a laptop cooler that has a dust filter, it just helps prevent that buildup from happening. How about higher clocked RAM, 5600 and undervolting? Sorry, our question is just make sure we have cover unexpectedness. So faster RAM will help RAM sensitive tasks, for sure. So we're gonna go into the firing range to start with. Apex Legends firing range. We'll try both resolutions, QHD and 16. 4K and the QHD plus resolutions. I gotta get Afterburner going here. Okay, I need to adjust Afterburner size here. 14. Okay, so let's take a look at our settings. So right now we're in 4K and we're at highest possible settings with VSync turned off. All right. 144 FPS. Getting used to this mouse. A little bit different using this mouse. Okay, so 4K highest settings, 147 FPS on average, 107. Let's do 4K. Well, let's see here. Let's go 16 by 10, 2560. All right, we're gonna have to change this a lot probably. So I'm trying to find a middle ground. All right, so here we are. QHD Plus with max settings. It is 16 by 10 right now, right? Keep that in mind. 223 FPS on average, 145 for our 1% low. So it means our 1% low right now on high settings is as high as our screen refresh rate at 144 hertz. And when we're at 4K, we were doing the max refresh rate for our average, but not for our 1% low. Interesting. All right, so now we're gonna do 2560 by 1600 low settings. We should be very close to 300 FPS. You know, this does feel slightly more responsive. Whoa, our 1% lows wigging out a little bit for a moment there. Could just be that we had loaded everything in again, you know. So, 297 FPS, 173 for our 1% low. Insane. I think that's the highest 1% low we've seen. I can't remember for sure, but it's very, very good at 178. Okay, so let's go back to 4K. Native resolution. All right, and so 4K low settings. Interesting, our 1% low is bouncing around a little bit. Let's see if it stabilizes. $195 is very good. Our 1% low, we're definitely getting a little bit of stutter. You see the frame time graph having these little jarring things happen. I'm not sure the reason for that. It might be just be that we're changing the settings a lot right now. All right, I'm gonna reset the 1% lows there. Okay, the 1% lows keeps happening. These little stutters keep happening for some reason. 100, honestly, it ran better at high settings. What? That's weird. Our 1% low was better at high settings for some reason. Whoa, interesting. I changed that one setting. What is the setting? I changed the texture streaming budget to 8 gigs. And that massively improved our 1% low performance. That's really good to know. I should make sure to keep that at the highest level that the GPU can support in the future testing. So now we're doing 133 for our 1% low at 4K. That's really good. Okay, so we'll try actually going into some gameplay now. And we'll do this in, we'll do it with 4K low for our settings. Ooh, okay, let's see here. Alareza says, are these temps safe for long-term gaming, having high 90s for over 60 to 70% of the time? I think that it's safe from the perspective of, will the CPU fail? Probably not. Very few CPUs or GPUs fail as long as you keep them within spec rated temps. That said, if you want the laptop to last a long time, my recommendation is to tweak the laptop so that the fans can run at like a medium speed, so the fans motors don't wear out as quickly. You tweak the GPU and CPU to undervolt it and power limit it to keep the temperatures around 80 degrees or less, ideally, under typical workloads. At least that's what I try to do when I'm tweaking my laptop, especially if you want long-term stability. Very interesting. Look at this. We're getting 97 watts of power through the CPU. And let's see what we get when we get into an actual match here. Okay. So this will be a control match, which means we have to capture one of 3 control points. We'll just try to get in here, get an idea of the performance level and temperatures. Let's do this one. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and reset. I have reset the FPS. Our 1% low is only 44 right now, 43. I'm gonna try to get to the roof. All right, we got 1 kill. Our 1% low seems to be doing a little bit better now that we got everything loaded in. Oh, crap. So 221 for our average, 93 for our 1% low is quite good. I think our 1% low is continuing to come upwards, which is good. Let's go for point C if we can. Helping teammates over here. Healing up. Our 1% low is definitely doing a lot better than it did at the initial outset testing. We're getting some kills. I'll just go ahead and let them kill me here so we can move into our next game. But 4K is doing awesome. Like, this is a great gaming experience with 4K full resolution. Like, I feel like I'm getting the 100% gaming experience without having to reduce resolution on this CPU GPU combo, which is just awesome. Okay. 207, 117. Like, that was great. I had no issues playing and really just enjoying my time. Next game is going to be Call of Duty Warzone. Alreza says, that's what I've been doing. I've been wondering what attempts to aim for. Lowered my cores on my i9 from 34 to 56. You're talking about your core target ratios from 56 to 34. That I think you don't need to touch the core ratios probably. But if you just do your power limit to like 60, then that should be good. I would, because that way when you're at least under a dual load, a power limit of 60 should be pretty dang good for the CPU. All right, so we're doing our shaders optimized in the top left at 16% right now. Let's go ahead and just check our settings. So we're going to start off with .4K NVIDIA DLSS on quality with minimum settings. We had a request to do extreme settings 4K, and I don't even know if that'll make much of a difference, but I'll give it a try, because I believe Noble was like, please try this, give me a super chat and everything. We'll try it. I'm curious about it, playing in high settings, but we'll do that at the end. So it looks like our shaders are fully rendered now. Nothing's in the top left corner. Noble with another $5 super chat. Test COD at 4K Extremes native resolution, please. You talking about no DLSS? Or is DLSS okay? 4K Extreme native resolution. I think that means no DLSS. LSP, I think it's so interesting that you can run 8 Android emulators nonstop. 110 watts of power. Let me know. I'm curious if you monitor your temperatures, if you see any temperature degradation or your CPU paste running out or anything. Or I guess drying out over time faster because you're keeping it so hot. All right, hopefully we don't get anyone to attack us. So this game is highly CPU bound, at least when under low settings. I believe even in 4K it will be CPU bound, but we'll see. I'm expecting around 135 to 160 FPS in that range, depending on the area that we're in, because we have the highest level i9 CPU. We will find out here soon. So keep in mind we're at 4K right now. 106, 107 FPS. It's interesting. We'll see what we get in the actual area. Now keep in mind that Warzone 2 recently came out with a patch that severely hurt Intel CPU gaming performance. So that may be part of what's going on if we don't get to the 150 FPS that I'm hoping for. Cinebench says, to be honest, I don't think that keeping a CPU at high temps can be problematic. I keep my i7 7700K for the last 6 years at 90 degrees Celsius, and it still works to this day. Very interesting. Yeah, it's true. Like the CPUs are really designed to run at that high temps. I think it's more likely that the fans will break or the VRMs will go bad before the CPU goes bad. That's my current guess. Courage says, hey Gizmo, can you recommend a gaming laptop cooling pad for the GT77 Titan or the Alienware M18? Well, right now, the IETS GT500 is the one that I have and use and recommend. It does work well with the laptops that are large. It has a dust filter. It costs, I think, $80 to $90. I feel like it's worth it if you're like after a high-end laptop cooler, though. Okay, so we'll do our initial test. This is for, we might have to do multiple load-ins to be able to do all the tests. Why are enemy operatives tracking my location? Okay, 108 FPS, 68 for 1% lows. All right, let's go ahead and change our settings. We're going to go to 2560 by 1600. And this will show you that resolution, at least on low settings, does not matter very much. That must be some new thing that they added that reveals everyone's locations. Okay, so 110, 108, 67. This shows you that they have nerfed the performance of the i9 CPU in this game. 109 FPS, 67. All right, so let's go ahead and do, we're going to go to Extreme with no DLSS. And we're going to change our resolution back to 4K. So this is the requested test from Noble Zenith. 4K, native 4K with extreme settings. Is the G14 4060 23 a good price at $1249? Yeah, that's an excellent price. I would definitely recommend that if you're after a portable laptop, for sure. Okay, just to verify our settings one more time. 4K, 144 hertz. We have Filmic SSA 2X. With extreme. I guess the extreme is part of the Filmic 2 is part of the extreme settings. All right, so here is extreme native 4K. I think it was still loading in or something. Well, I guess maybe not. I don't know. Let's go ahead and do the test. All right. So the FPS bumped up quite a bit. 82 for our average here in extreme settings at 4K. 83. 51. I feel like this is obviously a very good amount of performance, but a competitive game like this, I'm gonna definitely do minimum settings to get the most possible FPS I can get. You know, it feels very smooth in general, but, you know, still. And thanks so much, Noble Zenith and DCJ, for the super chats. I appreciate the support. So right now, running around at 4K extreme settings, native with no DLSS. Let's try adding DLSS at quality. All right, so DLSS in quality mode now, which is probably how I would do it. 109 FPS. So very similar FPS to what we're getting at lower resolution and lower settings. And we are still CPU bound. Oh, there's an enemy. Okay, I'm gonna wait. I should have waited until I had a better shot on him.
Right.
I'm trying to find this guy, see if I can find him. There he is. He's got a good spot up here. Because he can heal and I cannot. How do I go up to that level? We found him. Whoo, we barely lived through that. Oh, he was trying to snipe me. So right now, 4K extreme settings with DLSS on quality, getting the same FPS that we were getting at QHD minimum settings. The American hero. Oh wait, they did a Bad Boys collab? That's awesome. Winners never quit, quitters never win. That's great. I love Bad Boys. And Bad Boys 2 is really good too. Okay, so there's our test for Warzone 2. Very good performance, obviously, even at 4K. And this is, I think Apex Legends and Warzone 2 really shows you that you can play games and run them at high settings in 4K if you want to. So next up, we're doing CSGO. Okay, DCJ. That's great. Great to know. Is it currently at that price? We should probably add that to the top deals section right now. How loud is the fan? It's 59 decibels. All right, I'm going to be right back. All right, so we're gonna start out with our 4K test, high default settings. Let's go. How loud is 59 decibels? That's a great question. I would say it's basically 59 decibels basically means that you're gonna have to raise your voice to talk to someone next to you by a little bit. That's the way I would describe it. Like, think of like a blow dryer on the lowest setting, if you have a multi-setting blow dryer. Okay, so 4K, let's go ahead and see what we get in CSGO. You can see the FPS right here in the bottom right. 300 FPS right now, 300 to 400 FPS. Oh, last week the deal ended. Thanks. Thanks for telling me though. I'm glad you're able to get that good deal though. The 4060 is good, not much different from the 4070. That's true. It is better though. The 4070 is better, but not by a large margin. So the 4060 is oftentimes the sweet spot, I think, right now for like the more budget end CPUs or budget end gaming laptops. Okay, let's see what we get in the smoke here at 4K. 48, all the way down to 48 FPS in the smoke. That's pretty low, but we are in 4K, so I guess that makes sense. We'll see how low our 1% we'll see how low we go in QHD plus resolution when we go through the smoke here in a moment when we redo the test. Also, we'll see what our average is. Again, about 50 FPS in the smoke. ARP says, ordered a Pro 7i 4080 for $2,300. On second thought, thinking of getting the G14 with a 4080. How big will the difference between these be? The Pro 7i will be able to have a lot more multi-core level performance. That's probably the biggest difference. And obviously a 4080 is going to, would like to have a high power draw, which the Pro 7i will be able to provide the full performance level, where the G14 will be a bit more throttled. Okay, so even all the way zoomed in, it's kind of hard to see, but 329.3 FPS. So 329 FPS in 4K. Let's switch this down to 16 by 10, 2560 by 1600 resolution. Okay, so now we're at the reduced resolution. There are black bars on the side of the laptop. Much higher FPS now, up to the 600 to 700 range. Yeah, so the G14 versus a Pro 7i, I think the biggest thing there is the G14 is just so much more portable. So if you need the portability and you don't mind the smaller display, I think it's probably the way to go. If you are after, if on the other side you are after like the most performance and a little bit bigger display, then the Pro 7i is the way to go. 95, 96 FPS, I think, for our low in the smoke there. At QHD plus, obviously much higher FPS. Much better FPS being the low resolution, less complexity for rendering. The smoke, again, 88 I think was the lowest I saw for our FPS counter. Very good. The G14, I think, pulls 125. Is it 140? I thought the Zephyrus M16 did the 140. I think the G14 only does 125. But yeah, there will be, you know, running the G14 4080 will be like running this laptop in silent mode, kind of, you know. Okay, so taking a look at our FPS, 525 for our FPS here in QHD Plus. Awesome. Let's go ahead and switch us back to 4K. And let's get into a match on Dust 2. And do the murder real quick. G14 throttles with 125 watts with a 4060, but all 4060s will not go over 125 watts anyway, so it's not really a good way to test it. You really would have to get a 4080 or 4090 G14 to be able to test that wattage pull properly. But yeah, I would bet it would probably not go over 125 watts of power very often, even if it is 140. Just because the 4060 struggled. You know, the 4060 struggled with its temps in the G14 if you did more than 100 watts. You know, so, but the 4080 also is a much bigger, easier to cool GPU. So I think the 4080, 4090 would probably have better temps than the 4060 at the same wattage level. What's the best value laptop for around 1500? That's a great question, Eric. I'm thinking around 1500. Probably something like the Omen 17, the Legion Pro 5i. One of the, like the Zephyrus, you probably, for 1500, I would probably target either an RTX 3080 or 3080 Ti laptop, or target an RTX 4070 laptop with a really good display, which that can really be had around $1,300, $1,400. You don't really need to spend max possible. Oops, I bought a Scout. Oh well, we'll try to kill someone with a Scout, I guess. All right, let's go ahead and turn some sound on. Oh, we got 1 kill assist. Molotovs being thrown out. We're doing 300 FPS here in 4K right now. Obviously, very good FP. Oh. Let's try to get rid of this gun. AK acquired. I'm gonna try to. Teammate here. Try to flank the terrorists from behind. Did I see the Legion 9? I saw photos of it. I haven't looked at the detailed specs. I'm not sure. Did Lenovo officially? Whoa! Okay, someone just died. I don't know if Lenovo officially launched the specs or anything yet on it. 400 FPS right now. One kill. We know there's another guy over here to the left. Ooh, didn't quite get that guy. Okay, so clearly you can easily play 4K CSGO with no issues at all. Moving on to our next game, God of War is next. Eighth says, can I update the NVIDIA graphic driver for the Blade 18 with no issue, or should I leave it at factory driver from Razer? I've been upgrading my Blade 18 drivers, no problem, just using the NVIDIA GeForce Experience. So yeah, I'd say just go ahead and update it. $13,950 HX with a 4090 liquid metal. Apparently, I heard that it doesn't have mini LED, which is, I think, the biggest reason for them to have launched it. So I'm a little disappointed that they didn't have that. Okay, so 4K. We're going to do a 4K DLSS on quality. Graphics settings will be on Ultra. Let's see what our FPS is here. 4K God of War. Is the room you're in cold or normal room temps? The room I'm in is around 74, 75 degrees right now. Okay, so here we are. We're in God of War. Let's go ahead and do this test. 171 watts of power going through that GPU right now. 76 through the CPU, very high CPU and GPU wattage pulls. Our temp 65 degrees on the GPU, 80s, mid 80s for the CPU is very good for considering how much wattage we're pulling through there. Again, 4K, 120 hertz. Very good. I'm tempted to redo it one more time just because it seems like it was loading textures in or something. Does the GPU wattage drop on balance fans because of the thermal throttling, or is it the wattage drop automatic? The wattage drop was automatic and instant. It dropped to 155. Okay. So I'm going to do this one more time because it felt like it was loading textures in or something. Our 1% lows were a bit low. Yeah, the 1% lows do appear to be a lot better this time. Okay, so 9258 for our 4K Ultra settings. Awesome. If we were to go down to original, if you're doing original settings, 127, 125. Very good high FPS gaming experience in God of War. If you're even after 4K, you know, if you're trying to go for 4K. So I love that. Now we're going to need to go to our, to be able to change the resolution in this, we actually have to go in here and change it in Windows. Okay, so now we're in DLSS on quality, 2560 by 1600. Our graphics settings are on Ultra. All right, so the key thing here is now we're in a comparable resolution for other laptops. So we'll see what we get. All right, and we'll go ahead and do the test. 118, 120. Excellent 1% lows. Our temps, again, are still very good. 66 degrees on the GPU for this much wattage is awesome to see. 125.92 for our QHD God of War test. You don't even need to fiddle the settings. You can just keep them on Ultra and have high FPS gaming experience if you're going to do QHD. which I'd love to see that. Okay, so go back to 4K resolution. Moving into Cyberpunk 2077 now. Noble Zenith with a $5 super chat. Yes, I'm not sure if I responded to you. Thanks again for the super chat so much. Does the GPU wattage drop on balance fans because of thermal throttling, or is the wattage drop automatic? So I'm pretty sure that your wattage would drop due to thermal throttling if you are thermal throttling. But it pretty much instantly dropped to 155, which means it was not thermal throttling. Because thermal throttling will happen over time gradually rather than instantly. My guess is in balanced mode, 155 is the maximum. And of course, it will throttle lower than that if it has to. So what makes this laptop cost $5,300 besides the 4090? So the biggest thing about this laptop making it cost so much is, I think, the ports, the SODIMM slots being you have 4 SODIMM slots, you can go up to 128 gigs of RAM. You get a 4K 144 hertz mini LED display. That's probably the #1 feature. But like the things that stand out on this: mechanical keyboard, mini LED display, Windows Hello, fingerprint sensor, the most comprehensive port selection, PCIe Gen 5, support on this laptop, so you can have super fast SSD speeds if you need it. Obviously, excellent cooling solution in this laptop. And then, yeah, so 4K, frame generation enabled, DLSS on quality. Let's go ahead and run this benchmark. Ray tracing on Ultra. 64 gig version. I think it's more than 4,200. I thought it was 45.99 or 46.99. But maybe on sale it goes that low, Lance. I have to double check. Are you testing HDR with any of these games? I have not tested HDR. I don't believe we're testing HDR in any of these games. We can try with Cyberpunk. I'm not sure if it'll work. HDR is funky on Windows. That's basically my feedback on HDR. HDR drivers and Windows integration is awful, very poor. And so unless you know that a certain game has HDR support, I would not typically expect HDR support or a quality HDR experience. So right now, Cyberpunk 2077, 4K, DLSS on quality, ray tracing ultra, and ultra settings on top of that, 6337. So 63.4 for our FPS, 33 for our 1% low, or I think it was 37 for our 1% low in the moment. Very, very good overall performance. The tricky part, of course, is in a game like Cyberpunk, I want more than 60. I want at least 90 FPS. So that probably would not be quite enough FPS for me. I would probably want to switch this to like turn ray tracing off, play without ray tracing, or maybe set DLSS to a lower level. It looks like we're getting weird black bars with Cyberpunk on the top and bottom, kind of squishing the screen. But that's okay. We're doing this for the benchmark, not necessarily because we actually want to use this laptop in this resolution. We're just comparing benchmark performance versus other laptops at this resolution. So, yeah, mechanical keyboard is another key feature of this laptop if you really want a mechanical keyboard. So I think for most people, this laptop is probably not worth the full 5,300 for the max rated laptop. But I think that for the majority of people out, for the majority of people out there, going for something cheaper is the right way to go. But for certain people that are really looking for more of a desktop replacement, that's what the GT77 is about. Like, you get the desktop mechanical keyboard, you get equal to the best quality ultra bright display, but 4K is a bit overkill, I think, on a 17.3-inch display. That said, I did play Baldur's Gate 3 for an hour or two trying to troubleshoot, and looking at the details in the armor of my characters, it was noticeably more detailed than my Blade 18 when I was looking at it kind of side by side. I was like, they're like, the fine details when I'm looking at the characters were just better on this laptop. So for slower AAA paced titles, I could see why you'd want the 4K display if you have really, really good eyesight and you're sitting fairly close to the display. You'll see the difference. But for most people, average eyesight, probably harder to see the difference, especially at typical viewing range. 112 FPS in that run here at QHD. I'm not sure what our 1% low is. Right now it's saying 73. Obviously, very, very good performance in QHD Plus. We have seen higher numbers, though, at QHD Plus than this, 112. So, very interesting. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to our next game, which is going to be Hogwarts Legacy. Britt Allen says agreed. Lance says for non-FPS games, this monitor is very nice. Exactly. Like, it's a super high contrasty monitor with high levels of brightness and extreme detail. Like, if you're the kind of person that wants to like look at all the intricate little details in the game, oh man, like, it doesn't really get better than this in terms of pixels per inch on a laptop display. It's really, really insanely detailed and very, very just bright and vibrant and contrasty, to the point where like you're seeing the shadows and you can't hardly see into the shadows unless you turn the gamma up. So very immersive. Noble Zenith says, I heard one of the SSD screws inside the laptop is a different size from all the other ones. If you want to see the full teardown of where I take a closer look at all the internal stuff, Noble, check out my previous teardown unboxing review of the GT77 that I did closer to the beginning of the year. And I'm not sure off the top of my head if we had one SSD that was a different size. Usually they're all very similar, at least. Maybe it looks a little different. Eric says, for FPS games, 1440p is the sweet spot. Yeah, QHD or QHD Plus, depending on if you want 16:9 or 16:10. I think it is the sweet spot given our current laptop graphics. Britt Allen says $42.99. Gotcha. Do Hogwarts at max settings, max ray tracing, but ray tracing ambient occlusion off. Tour Castle. Man, Noble, I don't know. I can't do I don't think I'll be able to do all of those settings exactly. We're gonna at least start with our standard settings test. With so we're in 4K resolution. All right, DLSS on quality, frame generation enabled, uncapped, ultra settings with low settings for our textures. Ray tracing is enabled. These are the standard settings we do on all the different laptops. I will try doing ultra textures for you, and I can pop over to Hogwarts because you gave the $5 super chat just for funsies, but we'll do our benchmark here first. So right now, 4K ultra settings, ray tracing enabled. We'll do our quick one through. So again, keep in mind that we're in 4K right now. Even in 4K, we are not being GPU bound. We are still CPU bound. That's incredible that we're still so CPU bound in this game. So many NPCs in this area of the map. Once we get all the NPCs and all the textures loaded in, the game usually runs a bit smoother. So notice our frame time graph not being quite as crazy. Still getting some some jutter here and there. We're using 9 gigs of VRAM here at 4K on low texture settings. All right, so let's go and do our test. 75 FPS right now, 27 for our 1% low. 4K being very playable right now with no issues. I mean, it's obviously a little bit stuttery, but it's certainly very playable still and smooth enough to enjoy. Boom, 70 FPS, 27 for our 1% low. If we go ahead and to change our resolution, I think we have to change our native Windows resolution. So keep that in mind. We're gonna need to go back over here and change this down to 2560 by 1600. And I believe we're gonna have to restart the game as well. So before we restart the game, let's just do our full 4K test. We'll go to Hogwarts. We'll set settings to ultra for our textures. All the textures are reloading in right now. Ray traced occlusion off. Ray trace ambient occlusion off. Interesting that you want that turned off. I'll do all the settings except that. I just want to keep them more consistent. Like, at least we're doing all ultra settings right now in 4K, right? So all ultra settings. Hogsmeade, still basically the same. We'll jump over to Hogwarts, or can we? I don't know if we'll be able to, because I think that we're locked into... Yeah, right now we're logged into a Hogsmeade. Unless I go to... Yeah, I gotta go to manual save. We'll just jump over there so that way you can see. You wanted to see the Hogwarts area. How does 1440p look on this screen? I mean, it looks good. It doesn't look bad. I guess you're not. I'm looking at what you're saying, and it's not really. You're not really saying you want me to. You want to see that. You don't. Yeah, you're not saying you need me to go to there. So what we need to do right now is change our settings in Windows here to our lower resolution. Sorry, a little jumping around right there. How does 1440p look on this screen? It looks good. But right now I'm doing 16 by 10. Not 16 by 9. So that blurs it a little bit more than it would be if it was 2560 by 1440. Like at a typical viewing distance, it does not look fuzzy to me. It looks still very good. So that said, every game that I test, I'm pretty sure that we're going to get, if you tweak the settings correctly, you're going to be able to get extremely playable, fluid frame rates at 4K, like the native resolution. So I don't think it'll require really ever down resing to 1440p on this laptop, as long as you tweak your graphical settings, and occasionally, you know, like the highest demanding games might require turning textures down to like medium or high instead of ultra, and then enabling DLSS to quality when it's applicable. You know, if you do all of those things, I'm pretty sure you can get 4K playable frame rates over 100 FPS in every single game. Just depending on what setting you have everything set to. All right, so we have everything set to ultra right now. 2560 by 1600. If you turn off ambient occlusion, you don't go over the VRAM cap. That's interesting, Noble. We're not going to do that right now, but just going to verify our settings. 2560 by 1600 resolution. Everything is set to ultra right now. Nothing is set to low. We're going to do our initial run through here. Notice how much RAM the game is pulling right now. 24 gigs. $24.5 gigs. Insane. You really want 32 gigs of RAM for this game if you can. Because I see a lot of laptops get maxed out at 16. And I think that can impact stutter. Okay. Here we are. QHD resolution. Let's see what we get. 107.47 for our 1% lows right now. Very few laptops don't have stutter at all. Notice that our CPU is pulling 90 to 107 watts of power. We had quite a bit of stutter as we ran into the courtyard. 96 for our average, 28 for our 1% low. This is a game that likes to have fast RAM. I'm pretty sure that RAM speed can impact Hogwarts performance. And the lower RAM speed on this laptop, I think, could impact performance here. Eric, I don't want to do that because I want to make sure the number is exactly the same, Eric, because we are changing to 16:10 aspect ratio instead of 16:9 when we jumped over into this. Right now we're using 11.6 gigs of VRAM. Let's try. I'm curious because Noble was saying that if you turn off ambient occlusion, it reduces your VRAM usage. 11.6 gigs still being utilized by the VRAM. I don't know. Ambient occlusion didn't seem to affect things very much. If we turn off all ray tracing, it wants us to restart the game, but it does give us an FPS boost. Look at it. Turning off ray tracing, 170, 160, 175. Huge FPS boost all around. Our 1% low is still stuttering. But yeah, if you do 4K Hogwarts and just turn off ray tracing, you're going to see some really massive improvements in terms of performance. So yeah, there's Hogwarts Legacy. Let's switch our resolution back to 4K. And what's our next game? Dead Space. Okay. Hogwarts is still poorly optimized. That is correct. But it's also one of those games that have way higher technical difficulty to program and design and execute, because there's little magical particles jumping around everywhere in the windows, and there's a lot of NPCs, and it's a highly detailed world. And in some ways, I kind of give the developers more slack because they integrated all this extra detail, and it's really well designed world. That said, the interesting thing about Hogwarts to me was that some laptops, like my Blade 18 and the XMG Neo 17, both of those laptops had better 1% low performance to where the game was less stuttery with those laptops. And it's some of the other laptops just have more stutters. And I'm not sure exactly the reason. I feel like it's related to the RAM, but I don't know that for sure. Having faster RAM, I think, benefits that game because of all the things, all the details popping in and out of existence in Hogwarts. But yeah, total RAM obviously does make a difference. Okay. Let's go to our settings. We are currently at 2560 by 1440, but let's go to 20. Let's do 4K. We're always doing 4K first. Let's do 4K first to see our performance. And DLSS on quality. We want Ultra preset. Ultra preset does not use ray tracing. There is ray tracing in this game, but we've been always testing it without ray tracing. So I'm just keeping it consistent through all my tests. So 4K, DLSS on quality, incredibly detailed right now, 83 FPS. This is one of those games where you like look at the fine details on the armor, and you know, like this is the type of thing that like you're just getting more detail in the 4K than you would if it was a lower resolution. Honestly, I wouldn't say that it's like easy to tell the difference in Dead Space, but yeah, it is one of those games where you might actually see the extra detail go into the 4K compared to 2560 like QHD. So Zachary says, I expect better CPU cooling for that price. Well, right now in Dead Space, we're actually doing quite good. If you look at a lot of the laptops, Dead Space kills the CPU, like crushes it, like pulls the CPU really high wattage, is over 125 on the Asus laptops for some reason. And MSI just keeps the CPU a bit more in line, and our temps are staying perfectly in line. We're running high wattage through the CPU. Like my Blade 18 does a lot less wattage through the CPU, even in Dead Space. Yeah. Anyway, okay, so here we go. Let's go ahead and do our test. 4K, DLSS on quality, ultra settings. Move the mouse a little bit, but it is what it is. It does jump to over 90C at times. Yeah, but not very often, and typically it's in the 70s to 80s most of the time, while running 75 watts through the CPU. And that's a good amount of wattage and a good temperature, you know? So we got 100 and... Hold on, I gotta check the live stream, because I think I accidentally reset it. We got 9244 for our averages. Very good. Average for a 4K gaming experience. You're going to have a good gaming experience at 4K. Let's go ahead and change our resolution. 2560 by 1600. All the other settings will still be the same. So I've reset the counter now. Doing 130 FPS, 133 right now on average. We had some kind of stutter there for a moment. Our 1% low is lower than it normally looks like because of that. I think it'll come back up. It's around the 40 range. Yeah, it's about 40. All right, so here we are. Let's go ahead and do our QHD Plus 2560 by 1600 ultra settings, DLSS on quality. 133 FPS on average. 6050 for a 1% low was very good for a moment there. Let's see if it stays above 50. Typical 1% low in this game, for some reason, likes to drop down to like 35 on most laptops. And the fact that this CPU is maintaining a nice steady 75 to 80 watts of power, I think is a key indicator of why our 1% low is a bit above average. Plus, we're not running into thermal throttling on the CPU either. 136 for our QHD Plus performance. This is much better than our initial Dead Space test. I'm pretty sure we got, I can't remember what we got, but I'm pretty sure it was under 130 during our initial test. So there's Dead Space at QHD. Let's move on to our next game. Next game is Last of Us Part 1. I got my Legion Pro 7i to 10 to 12 hours of battery life from almost 100% yesterday, so I can work on my lab assignment and library for several hours without even carrying my 100-watt USB-C adapter. But how are you going to run your emulators, man? If you're if you're running on battery, how are you going to run your 100 watts of emulators? Okay, so the shaders have been loaded. I had a request comment. To use one of my later saves in the game, which I can do that. I could do a later save in the game for the game test in Last of Us going forward. I'm okay with that. So this will be the first time actually testing this area of Last of Us. So I'll need to find some new methodology for testing. Let's check our settings. Display, 4K DLSS on quality with no aliasing mode activated, just DLSS. Our graphics settings are on ultra settings, ultra settings right now. No textures on medium. We could lower them to medium. Don't really have to on the 4090. I don't think it'll impact performance, but let's do it, because I've been doing this on medium every time. The performance should not be influenced much, though. All right, so we should probably do something like walk down this path and then shoot that guy or something for our benchmark test. And then we'll get into a bit of a battle. I'm going to start. I'm turning on the audio, by the way. Okay, so we're going to start from the front of this car. Starting from the front of this car, let's see what we get. 97 FPS, 4K, 97 FPS, 84 for our 1% low. Our prime time graph is looking excellent right now. Temperatures are also looking quite good. We're going to pop this guy in the... I think we're just going to try to go up and stabby or something here. Can I do that? How do I do this? E grab. F stealth kill. And then we'll go out here and die to the tank. I'm pretty sure there's a tank out here. And we'll just let this guy kill us. And this will be our benchmark test. Boom. Okay, so 8161. Let's go ahead and lower our resolution. Should load us back into the same spot. And let's go to our graphics. Sorry, it's our display settings. All right, so we're at 2560 by 1600, DLSS on quality. All ultra settings with medium textures. 122 FPS. Interesting. We have the resolution, but we got only like a 50% gain to performance. All right, we'll go ahead and stealth kill this guy again. Oh my gosh. All right, and we'll go out and die to the thing again. I only have 2 bullets in this gun. Okay, so 111 FPS, 67 for our 1% low. Very good performance in QHD, obviously, and 4K. Very, very playable at in the 80s in Last of Us. Even at 4K. All right, very nice. Let's go ahead and go to Dying Light 2. I got my Legion Pro 7i to... Okay, never mind. It's still the same thing. Let me go ahead and refresh this. Yeah, for some reason the chat wasn't updating. $20 gig of RAM. Does Last of Us take 20 gigs of RAM? It does. Wow, interesting. So another game where more RAM can really benefit you. Interesting. I actually was not expecting that. All right, let's go to our settings. I'm gonna go to high quality ray tracing. We want full screen, 4K, DLSS on quality, frame generation on. To restart the game. Atlas Fallen runs 50% faster with E-cores off. Interesting. I'm really curious if there would be any kind of a benefit to turning off E-cores in general gaming. Be a pretty interesting live stream, right? Try doing this full test and then doing it again with E-cores disabled. Because if a game is not optimizing using the correct cores, or is confused about how many cores to use or whatever, making it easy for the game developers could be beneficial. At the same time, I think you could confuse the game engine and be like, well, there's supposed to be E-cores, but they can't access the E-cores or something. And that might reduce performance. Whew, sorry, excuse me. Okay.
Protect our crops from the winter cold.
So 4K, ray tracing, high quality, frame generation enabled, 88 FPS. again, in 4K, very, very good FPS. You know, again, we're pulling more than 16 gigs of RAM. I don't know if you saw that. 16.9 gigs of RAM. $63 on the GPU, 79 on the CPU. And I know some of you are saying that this is running hot on the CPU, but the thing you have to keep in mind is the amount of wattage we're pulling on that CPU is nice and consistently over 60 in almost all these games. So considering the amount of wattage that the CPU is pulling, I think the temperature is good, especially since there's a lot of shared heat pipe cooling between the CPU and GPU on this laptop. So Intel F Gaming, no productivity tasks, disable E-cores. Well, that's kind of my question, Baka. I would be very curious to know how much of a performance difference that would make. I think it'd be worth doing a whole live stream on it. So 89 FPS on average is quite good. Okay, so 4K, 88 FPS. Hero, no. Let's go ahead and change our setting, our resolution, and get down to 2560 by 1600. $2560 by 1600. All right, so that added black borders on the sides. Go ahead and test it. So 88 at 4K. What are we going to get now that we're doing QHD plus resolution?
Man, I'm so thirsty.
Yeah, LSP, you won't be able to run emulators very well without having the E-cores enabled. So you pretty much got to keep them enabled. $130 FPS here at QHD plus. Temps are still looking good. Still high GPU utilization. Again, high quality ray tracing enabled, frame generation turned on. Game's looking great. Very smooth, fluid time frame time graph. Except when switching between different scenes, but that's normal. The GPU temps in this laptop are certainly excellent at 65 degrees. The CPU is the only one that gets a little bit spicy in the, getting up, but it's because it's pulling higher wattage, It pulls higher wattage for sure than my Blade 18. So, like, I do feel like the CPU cooling could be slightly better. Like if it had liquid metal or a vapor chamber, maybe it could be slightly improved by a few degrees, but it's good. I would say this is good cooling. 136.7 FPS for our median. So 136 FPS, or 137 FPS essentially for Dying Light 2 at QHD plus. Moving into Baldur's Gate 3, I've got a juicy scene for you in Baldur's Gate 3. I have been playing Baldur's Gate 3 quite a bit. I've got probably 15 hours now in Baldur's Gate 3. And I mean, the storytelling in this game is next freaking level. My main issue with the game is the turn-based combat can feel a bit methodical or slow. I prefer usually real-time combat type of games, but I understand why they do turn-based. It's very complex and strategic because of the turn-based nature of it. Interesting stutter right there on the menu. Not sure what's going on there. Look at our GPU wattage. Only 55 watts. Something is going on with the game. I think we might need to go for a restart on the game. I don't know, let's see. Is it worth playing then? Well, if you like RPGs and like the freedom of like literally almost doing anything you want, and like you can make huge choices about what happens to characters and the situations your characters get into, and all of like that's probably the biggest thing. Like the combat is fun, but it's not like amazing to me. The thing about this game that's amazing is like I had a character wake up in the middle of night trying to kill another character, and you get to choose whether you intervene or not, and the character will die if you don't intervene, and if you do intervene, then the person trying to kill the character will start hating you probably. So you get to make character choices that are very meaningful and impactful. So right now we're running into some kind of issue. Only 40, it's like we're running on battery or something. I'm gonna try unplugging and replugging in the laptop. Yeah, something's going on here. Yeah, it says we're in battery only mode. Let me try plugging in and replugging in the power adapter. Okay, there we go. 165 watts. And I want to point out that I had some bad frame time graphs in this game for some reason. I don't know why, but it was causing some stutters. It was like dropping the wattage on the GPU. Right now it's not bad. It's pretty dang good. Like in general, it's extremely smooth, like over 100 for our 1% lows right now. Okay, so this is a scene where you've got a ton. I've got all of these goblins. I've got like 10 goblins here that are trying to kill me, and I got all my guys up here on the top up here. And I've got this spell. This is the ladder they're trying to climb up. I got this spell that's like flying daggers that does damage to them every time they try to climb the ladder. And then I keep pushing or killing them whenever they come up the ladder. So I'll push them. You can literally shove them and potentially do damage to them. So, but that said, I'm going to try to do something else. I'm going to also summon a weapon. So I'm going to use this cleric. I'm going to summon a spiritual weapon here. So this is going to be another character you can control and you can use to attack enemies. And I can do 2 actions with this character. Okay, so I managed to damage and kill that character. So here's the boss guy. Let's go ahead and I'm going to do this as the benchmark, having this boss guy climb up and try to kill. So right now, I guess let's verify our settings that we're in. So that guy just died going into my blade of daggers. Let's go ahead and verify our settings. Our video settings, we're at 4K, 144 hertz. We're going to do the ultra preset. DLSS on quality. All right, and I'm going to go back and load back that game, the save game, and I'm just going to end the turn and let the camera auto control, and that way we can kind of get a benchmark for some automated actions that are happening. Okay. So all right, so we're just gonna do we're gonna start the benchmark. We'll do an attack here, and we'll end the turn. And now this will be our benchmark for this game. All these little goblin moves. That's the boss goblin right there. That guy just died. Okay. All right, and we'll do, I don't know, an arrow attack on the boss goblin. We missed. We'll end the turn. We'll try to shove the boss goblin off the ledge. We successfully shoved the boss goblin off the ledge. We'll end turn. So we're getting some gnarly 1% lows. That guy took damage going in. All right, and I don't know, what should we do? We should throw a firebomb down onto these guys. So they all caught fire now. See, and that's the kind of thing that I'm like, I love this flexibility for trying to find a way to force the AI into like doing stupid stuff against you. Okay. So 4K, we're doing 136 FPS. Our 1% low is actually really good, but we have these occasional glitch stutter things. Like you can see the frame time graph is usually like very smooth and very good, even at 4K. And like this is the kind of thing I was talking about in terms of detail on 4K. Looks like I gotta lower the exposure a little bit so you can see this a little better. But like the detail on the armor, because this is 4K resolution, it looks so good. Even when you're just like, I don't know, like at QHD resolution, you just don't have this level of detail and the fine details around the pieces of equipment and armor. So let's go ahead and load QHD resolution, QHD plus resolution. 2560 by 1600. And we'll load back to our previous save game. Eric, I do want to do the strict SCAR 17 with the new 7945 HX 3D. I absolutely do. So, wow. So looking at our CPU, we are CPU bound, only 50-60% of GPU utilization, and our CPU is pulling like over 100 watts. Oh, sorry, you can't see that. Let me switch this. So we're QHD plus resolution, 2560 by 1600. We're very CPU bound right now. 170 FPS. I just refreshed it. Let's go ahead and do a firebolt damage. All right, we'll go and end the turn. All right, and let's just try to hit that guy. We miss, and then we'll shove this guy. Success. So, you know, going to QHD resolution, we didn't gain that many FPS. So, I mean, this is again an example of where, like, I would definitely play 4K with this game, and I would say that it's one of the few games where, like, noticing the fine details on your characters will be awesome. And I think we'll have a noticeable little improvement for a lot of people. Like, it's a nice visual improvement, you know, is what I'm trying to say. So I just covered them in grease, and that also immediately ignited because there's already fire on the ground. So it did fire damage to all of them. They're like all dying. This is such an effective combo. I don't even have to do anything. They're just going to kill themselves. Practically. So big frame time stutter right there. All right, we just killed that guy. So yeah, 144 FPS right now, and generally speaking, the 1% low is really good, but sometimes has little stutters. So Baldur's Gate, 4K, excellent. 100 QHD plus, also excellent. Move on to the next game now. Witcher 3 for our final game test at QHD and 4K, and see how we do. Youssef, always great to catch one of these live. Thanks, I appreciate it. Appreciate you stopping by. So The Witcher 3 being a very similar style RPG game, but with real-time combat instead of turn-based combat, but a lot of storytelling freedom in The Witcher 3, but not as much as Baldur's Gate. That's the thing, like Baldur's Gate has a lot more gameplay freedom. Like, this is definitely a game where your decisions do matter. Like, you can change to a few different, like, I think, endings or outcomes. But it's not going to be as, like, pronounced as Baldur's Gate. Because, like, literally, like, in Baldur's Gate, you could, like, basically kill the Grove, which is kind of like this, like, druid safe haven place. You can choose to be an evil villain that raids and sacks the safe haven place and does evil things and is terrible and is awful to other people. And you can associate yourself with evil people and like join the bad side, basically join Sauron's side, or you can be like a good person and save them and defend them, or like some kind of middle ground in between. There's like oftentimes like 5 different paths through the game. And you can have like a whole different team of people around you, which also, you know, if you change who you're with in the game, then like when you go up to a goblin, maybe you have a character in your team that hates goblins and is like afraid of them, versus in someone else who's like a goblin friend who's like, hey, what's going on? You know, so it's like there's all kinds of like different it feels very fluid and free-flowing in Baldur's Gate. And you do have some choices in The Witcher 3. It's just not nearly as many. Okay, so 4K, ray tracing ultra settings right now. Frame generation should be turned on. Let me just double check frame generation is on. Frame generation is off. There we go. Okay, there we go. And we had 60 FPS cap as well, which was not giving us the right performance. So now 4K Witcher max settings, 92 FPS. And this is another game where you get like the little details, right? The details on the character armor or whatever. It's gonna just be a little more pronounced because it's 4K. You know, like, let's zoom in on that armor so you can see the 4K. All right, so that's what 4K looks like. I'll zoom in, and let me go ahead and That's what 4K looks like with the armor and everything. Let's just go down to QHD resolution because this is a nice, easy test. Okay, and that's what, and that's the difference with QHD. And of course, this is not a native QHD display. And to my naked eyes, it still looks good. But I can tell, like, the sharpness around the little dots and the little stitching on the sword and the armor, it's just not quite as crisp looking as 4K. But it's not going to be very noticeable at all when the character is moving and you're in the action of it. And honestly, even at 1080p, it's hard to tell, I think. Between 1080p and QHD and the action of it, it can be hard to tell the resolution difference on a display this size. The bigger the display, the easier it will be able to tell the difference. All right, so we're going to do our 4K test. Here we go. So 85 FPS. We are pretty much GPU bound, maybe with a little bit of CPU boundness going on or memory boundness going on, because we're at 99% GPU utilization. So something is bottlenecking us just a tiny bit, but basically GPU bound. 170 watts through the GPU, 73 through the CPU. You know, we probably don't need to be pulling this level of wattage through the CPU, but this helps lower, you know, this helps improve our 1% lows pulling this much wattage. That said, very good performance, 96 FPS here in 4K, 66 for 1% lows. If you want to boost FPS, the simplest way to do that is just turning off ray tracing. And now in 4K, ray tracing disabled, 130 FPS, 88 for a 1% low. It just becomes really smooth. I think noticeably smoother. And this is probably the way I would play the game if I was playing The Witcher 3 on this laptop, 4K with no ray tracing, because this game was originally designed not to have ray tracing. So it looks really good without ray tracing enabled. And now we're going to go back and do ray tracing enabled, but QHD resolution. So let me go ahead and make those changes to the settings. You know, I just noticed that DLSS was on auto instead of quality, potentially. I don't think it was, but I want to double check that our performance is correct when we're at 4K here again, because okay, so I think we might need to retest. Because on auto, it probably put it down to balanced instead of quality. So I'm going to retest this again. Yeah, it was on. I'm pretty sure DLSS was on auto instead of quality. And you can never really do a good quality benchmark test with DLSS on auto. So getting a little bit lower now that DLSS is on quality, 74 FPS on average, 54 for our 1% lows. Did you just say Sauron's side? Yes, I did. It's the absolute in Baldur's Gate 3, but everyone knows what Sauron is. No one knows what the absolute is. Okay, so 74 FPS on average, 56 for a 1% low with 4K. Let's go ahead now change it down to 2560 by 1600. Bingo. All right. If you're a Lord of the Rings fan, I'd love to see you test some of the Lord of the Rings games. But, I mean, what Lord of the Rings games are even recent? I don't think there's any recent Lord of the Rings games, right? Lord of the Rings Online is like 12, 15 years old or something. I don't know. Like, I've read the Lord of the Rings books, I think 4 times. Watched the movies probably 4 times. Maybe 5 times. I don't know. I am a huge Lord of the Rings fan, but I don't think there's any recent games that would be worth testing. Maybe I'm missing something. If I am, tell me. I should probably play it. Okay, 106 FPS on average. QHD plus. Ultra settings with ray tracing. DLSS on quality. Beautiful. 119 FPS, 77 for a 1% low. So, I mean, ray tracing is certainly viable. More viable, I think, at QHD resolution than at 4K. So it's like 120. I accidentally reset it when I pressed the key there. But very good performance overall, okay? So let's go ahead and do a summary of everything we've found out about the GT77. Shabam. So, I want to mention one more time that this is for sale for someone. This used laptop is for sale. $4,000. It is the 64 gig version. I think originally 43 or 4,400, right around that price range. Lance played 4,600. He's asking $4,000 for it, and he's willing to throw in the power adapter, the SlimQ power adapter, for a little bit of an extra. So if you guys are interested in that, let me know. But contact Ahmed if you're interested in buying this laptop. There's a link in the description to all the used laptops that I am selling right now. And let me just quickly point that out. You can find it on this list. Open this up and just press this USA 1 right here. This is all the laptops that are currently for sale. And here's the number, 281-891-9373 if you want to buy this laptop or any of the laptops on this list. There's also a desktop on here, a Sony a7S camera that I used for filming. Still in excellent condition. It's just the body. But yeah, there's a lot of things for sale on here if you're interested in some really good deals on some technology. Okay, so it's time to do our summary of this laptop. Let's do it. Okay, so how does this GT77 stack up versus the competition? Well, the most unique features of this laptop is the 144 Hertz 4K mini LED display. Without a doubt, it is excellent, superb gaming display for any kind of casual gamer out there. You know, you want the most detailed visual image possible. This is the only laptop that I know of, except for maybe, I guess, the Razer Blade 16 also has a 4K 120 Hertz mini LED display. That's the only other 4K competitive mini LED display that I know of off the top of my head. But typically speaking, most people with average eyesight probably won't be able to tell much of a visual difference, especially with moving images. But when you get down to the nitty gritty and you look at it in detail, yeah, you can see the increased resolution for sure, especially in like slower paced titles where you're really like looking at people's like the characters and the armors and all that stuff, and you're like, it's not moving very fast, like that's really when you're going to see more of the resolution improvement than typical fast-paced gameplay. Typical fast-paced gameplay, I think the sweet spot for performance and FPS and price is more QHD or QHD plus resolutions. So typically, for most fast-paced gamers, this isn't really the best display, but if you're more casual or you just really want a bright display, colorful display, this is excellent. And I did do I did disassemble and test the display on this laptop already earlier in a previous live stream. It's not too hard to take apart. It's not easy either, but you can take it apart. You can upgrade 4 SODIMM slots in it. You got 3 M.2 SSD slots in it. And the display was reaching, I believe, over 800 nits brightness in my Spider 5 Elite test, and a very high contrast ratio because of the mini LED aspect of it. The ports on this laptop are equal to the best you can buy this year, pretty much. The Alienware M18, I think, has like one more USB port or something, but other than that, this is the best ports available laptop out there. This has Windows Hello. This has a fingerprint sensor on it. The only laptop, aside from some super portable laptops, that has a fingerprint sensor this year that I can think of off the top of my head. The mechanical keyboard is superb for typing. It feels great. It has a great shunk with the Cherry MX keys on it. The right side number pad is a bit scrunched. You can see it here. It's a little bit more scrunched than your normal typical number pad, which is kind of the downside, I think, of this keyboard layout. And I think one way that MSI can easily improve their laptops, their big 17-inch or larger laptops really should have a different keyboard layout than their 15-inch more portable laptops, because this has the same keyboard layout as the MSI Pulse 15, for example. But this is obviously a much better keyboard because it's a mechanical one, and per key RGB backlighting is very good. So very bright, very vibrant, and you do have excellent customization, and you also have a rear light bar on here that, especially in a darker environment, looks awesome and is very vibrant and bright. Also, MSI light up logo here on the back. Very stiff, high quality metal build in general, with a little bit of flex in the middle. I think they could add another rubber support leg here and there, and that would really help improve the flex of the chassis. Fan noise testing, we did 59 decibels in max fans, 55.5, I think, or 56 decibels in extreme performance auto fan mode. Balanced mode was like 55 decibels, or was it 54? I have to double check. Balanced mode was even quieter, I think 52, 53 or something. And then silent mode was just very, very quiet, like 43 decibels with a 42.5 decibel bass. Speakers on this has excellent boomy bass to it, but the mids and highs could be more clear. And I think the overall volume also could be a bit louder. Those are the areas in which the Blade 18 beats this GT77. For Cinebench R23, MSI has, I think, messed up the BIOS on it. They've limited the CPU power when the NVIDIA GPU is active. Even in NVIDIA only mode, the Intel CPU can only reach 120 watts max power. And every other high-end laptop can at least do 130 watts, including the Blade 18, which is like a thinner chassis than this, and much more portable. So I think that the GT77 should be able to go to at least 145 watts when under dual load, or like at least when the NVIDIA GPU is active. Honestly, they should be able to use software to limit how much power goes to the CPU. Like if the NVIDIA GPU has a load of like, say, more than 50 watts, then they should limit the Intel CPU from pulling more than 150 or 120 or whatever. In CPU only workloads though, it sucks having to restart the machine into integrated GPU only mode in order to get the full CPU performance. Now, when you go to the full CPU performance, you're getting great performance. We did like over 30,000 in Cinebench R23 with everything stock. If you follow my undervolting and overclocking guides with the MSI GT77, you can get like 32 to 34,000, maybe even 35,000 if you have a good silicon lottery in Cinebench R23 through undervolting, which essentially overclocks and makes the laptop run more power efficiently. So yeah. Now, if you do GPU undervolting and overclocking, I think that you're going to see nice temperature gains and nice temperature gains, especially if you're doing like say balanced mode. You could probably get this thing to run at 2250 on the core clock with 155 watts power draw would be my guess. That'd probably be around the sweet spot to have really good temps on the CPU and GPU, while not having too loud of fans. So that's probably what I would target if I was using this laptop and wanting to do long-term, especially if I was gaming over speakers. And this thing can game over speakers really well. If you run this thing in silent mode, you're gonna still get good CPU, GPU performance, and the fans are gonna be very quiet. Obviously, the performance will be much more limited. Probably the best balance of CPU and GPU performance is probably gonna be balanced mode with an undervolted GPU and undervolted CPU, and that'll probably be your best blend of overall performance, fan noise, and everything. But of course you could go down to the silent mode if you're very noise sensitive as well and still have high levels of performance, because this thing has so much cooling in it. The fans don't really have to run too high to still have a good amount of air pushing through the system. Now, in terms of performance levels, we were able to get playable, excellent 4K performance in every single game, but it's not like, how you say, like the competitive games, I would still go to lower settings, either low settings or maybe even lower resolution if you really want to be like, bam, 144 FPS for a 1% low, or just maximize your aiming ability. And in that scenario, it's totally fine to drop this to QHD. And eventually, maybe certain games you will have to drop down to QHD. And it's nice to know that the display still looks good at QHD resolution. It's barely noticeable when you drop to QHD resolution. The big drawback about if you had to do that, or if you want to play esports games, is that this display at 144 hertz is just not as advantageous as having a 240 hertz response rate or a 360 hertz response rate, or if you're an extreme esports gamer, going all the way to the 480 hertz response rate that the Alienware M18 has, or the X16. The Alienware laptops can basically go to 480. So if you're an extreme esports gamer and you want the best esports gaming laptop, this is probably not it unless you're going to use an external monitor. Especially true because this response rate on this display has just a little bit of ghosting when you're moving very fast. And that just makes it, again, not an ideal esports gaming laptop, but still very good for casual gamers out there. Even if you're doing some more fast-paced gaming, it still doesn't feel bad to play it, but I wouldn't want to be a competitive, highly competitive player and use this laptop simply because you're basically buying yourself into a very expensive laptop that has a slight disadvantage versus the competition, because almost all of the other laptops in the premium laptop space has a 240 hertz QHD display. Okay. Did I talk about everything? I think so. I mean, if you're after a 4K gaming experience, ultra premium, everything, you can get this tricked out with a 4090 and the i9 for around 4,300, 4,400 plus tax. And I think it's 4,299 plus tax, which turns out to about 4,600 total. If you're interested in buying this unit that I'm holding here that we tested today, let Ahmed know, like I said, in the comments down below. There's a link to the spreadsheet. That's it for this laptop review. Let me go ahead and do a Q&A with the chat real quick. Let me see. LSP says, I would prefer the GE78 with the same specs over the GT77. The big difference between the GE78 is the display is just way better in terms of brightness and contrast and resolution. on the GT77. Obviously, professional work would be excellent on the GT77 if you're a graphics designer or a video editor, and you really want to zoom in and see those details of the things you're working on. A 4K display is a nice advantage, I think. Okay. One last question. How's your shoulder after placing the laptop on it for the summary? This one's heavy. I kind of feel it a little bit, you know, in my traps here. Lance says the laptop has an older 1 terabyte Evo drive in it as a secondary drive. It also has a copper shim on the SSDs. And this laptop also has a skin on the top deck, on the keyboard deck, as well as the back of the lid for extra protection. Devious Light offers $100 for it, Lance. Are you going to take it? All right. That's it for the live stream. I'll see you guys in the next one. I think the next one is going to be overclocking the memory in the XMG Neo 17 if I can get it to work off live stream first. And then we'll do a bunch of testing with different memory speeds and seeing how much it affects performance, which I'm really curious about. So we'll see you in the next one. Brandon out.